Okay, welcome everyone. It is October 2nd, 2023. Goodness sakes, the year's gone by fast. It's our 9 o'clock strategic planning meeting. Let the record reflect that we've got Commissioner Jordan and French are on Zoom. Commissioner Kearns and CUNY are here in the conference room, and I anticipate that Commissioner Waldorf will be here shortly. So we'll see her when she comes in. But we're going to go ahead and get started because we've got a busy morning. So first off, let's see, we're going to start off with the sheriff.
Actually, I'm going to have Kevin Ritchie discuss.
Yeah. So this goes into part of the budget presentation for next year. We found out about a week and a half ago that we have to place our vehicle order for any vehicle that's ordered for 2024. I think it's the week of the 19th, October 19th. And if we don't get in that window, then we don't get vehicles ordered for 2024. So it's kind of a wonky way that Ford does it. One thing to note, we presented our budget for the vehicle order for this year. I think it's $1.7 million. We can place our order and get that order in, and if the budget changes after that, we can always cancel, but we can never add. So that's an important thing to remember. So that's why we're here, just to kind of talk about. I have a vehicle replacement plan, which the board has asked us to come up with. I can email that out, or I can give you hard copies. I gave a copy to Randy, and it kind of gives us our idea of how we're going to replace our vehicles every 3 years. So, so we have a plan going forward. This is the budget. We just need permission to place the order and then cover or get the vehicles ordered sometime in October. So,
but with that order placement window, which I understand it from construction trucks,
right.
And all of that, because they have to. My understanding, they have to adjust the line to for police cars, and so
Yep.
that's why.
Yes.
Right, that's why it's a 1 week window.
It's a 1 week window, yeah, and that's for everybody in the entire country. So it's pretty competitive. So
it's the same with like specialty trim packages. They only make them at a certain time of year, so
Yes.
you have to have that order in, or else you're out of luck for the rest of the year.
Right, and we
Change
saw
the order.
the city of, yes, we can. And the city of Spokane last year did not get their order in during that week, therefore did not get any cars last year. No new police cars. And we're just trying to avoid that. It allows us to let the potential bidders bid and order the number of cars that we would be requesting. And again, once that bid is in, once that order is in, if we decide we come back and we need to throttle back that order, we can do that. No penalty to us, and no penalty to the dealers that bid on the contract.
Okay, and once you put the order in, I mean, since your more formal budget presentation is coming up,
After the fact.
Again, we can
Right.
still.
we could change it. We can make modifications backwards.
Yes.
Down, not up.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, you're including the Valley's order also, correct, with yours?
These assumptions are for your orders, but you would also be
Yes,
placing an order
we
for the
will
Valley.
be placing the Valley's order at the exact same time, but they're paying up front for theirs. So
Right.
these
Just
assumptions
like
right
they
here
did
are
last
just for
year, where they're
ours.
paying up
Yes.
front.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions?
A couple things, go ahead.
Commissioner Jordan?
Did you say there's some kind of document that you are sending out?
Yes, I'll email that out to everybody. We just kind of came up with it. We just finalized it, and I just wanted to check that the numbers are accurate before I send it out. So it's,
So we don't have anything in front of us. They have,
yeah.
and the budget office.
I gave it to the budget office. Yeah.
So,
Okay, thanks.
but my understanding is, Chris, just so you know, that when we have our more formal discussion, it is not an issue they can not accept all the cars at the time, and they will be able to resell them. The dealers will be able to resell them with no problem because they're in utmost demand.
They're not worried about that.
Yeah. I mean, I got the same thing with, like I said, with Max with trucks. Like, we're ordering trucks, and like if they somehow don't need it, then it's like the dealer's happy because they have something to sell.
Yeah, they can sell for a little more.
Well, and they can cancel the order before they're ever manufactured with no penalty to them. And so I think our budget presentation is October 30th. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's that Monday.
30th Monday.
I think it's the 30th. And so we'll have that number by then, and that would give the dealers plenty of time to adjust their order if necessary.
So I don't have a problem with you guys going with knowing what that window is and how it works. Go ahead and getting that information in and all of that, and
Okay.
hopefully we won't be making any adjustments to it. And I'm excited to see what your plan is.
Be great.
Because I know, as you know, as Josh and I know, being here, it's like there was several years where we couldn't get new cars or any of that, and which, you know, as I say to people, Ozzy maybe was when I did my ride along at Anna Crown Vic where it was fogged up. Literally had to roll the window down to see it.
Right.
You know, that you know, we do want to make sure that it's
Right.
safe.
And I will say that is not generally the experience that our folks are having now. We're actually in a really good place without talking too much about things that we'll talk about on the 30th. There have been some financial resources that we've used in the past to buy vehicles other than patrol vehicles that have since dried up. And now we're going to have to shift some of that burden onto general fund dollars because our seizure funds, our doofies are non-existent.
Just a quick question. Is the purchase of new vehicles, is that expressed in the proposed budget that Randy gave us? Or is this some additional?
It is in the capital portion of the budget, yes.
Okay.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, Sheriff Knowles just made a comment, or I think maybe Under Sheriff Ritchie, with regard to what we previously used for funds to pay for fleet were the Dupi accounts that were acquired because of seizures, and that stream of money has been eliminated by the state legislature and their changes in the law. Is that accurate?
Well, I think it's happened in a couple different areas. Because of the Blake decision, there were a lot fewer drug delivery arrests as a result, which reduced the amount of money we were seizing. There have also been some Washington State Supreme Court and Ninth Circuit decisions made about what vehicles and what items could be seized from people who are indigent, which, suffice it to say, most people who are dealing drugs aren't reporting their drug dealing income, so they appear indigent. And a vehicle or other things would be significant assets that we are no longer allowed to seize. All of that has produced lower, for lack of a better term, revenue stream for our Doofby side. And that is where we have traditionally purchased all of our vehicles for our undercover and property crimes investigators. And we were down now to a level where we are unable to purchase those items with our Doofy funds anymore.
Yeah, my point with regard to the comment is that this is just one more area where, the pressure on local jurisdictions to cover the cost has increased because of actions at the state level. Thank you.
Yep.
Scott.
Commissioners, we'll work with the Sheriff's Department. We may want a resolution just acknowledging the ability to send the order in, even though it's against 24 budget, which hasn't been established yet. And we have not done an RFP yet, is that correct, or we have?
We have not.
Okay, so then that'll come later as well, but just something, and Chris and I were just chatting about it, but we'll make sure that something's on there if we need to formalize an action for the board.
And I think we did the same exact process last year.
Yeah.
Was it? Okay.
Did we do a resolution?
I don't recall if you did a
I
resolution
don't
last year.
remember a resolution.
I don't remember either.
Last year, I think we just,
I don't think there was a resolution last year.
because it's,
The only, just so I have a clear understanding, the only kind of difference is, right, it's a normal process, it's just being billed against the 24 budget.
Right, so,
Right.
so last year was the first year Ford ever came to customers and said, you have a 1 week window to order for next year. Last year was the first year, and
Okay.
it is going to be how they operate going forward.
Okay, all right, yeah, we'll just double check it and make sure we don't need
Okay.
anything.
because that was due to COVID and all the shortages and everything, supply chain, or nobody could get cars. So I'm sure, once people have established that, then it becomes an easier way for them to continue to do business in the future with,
Yeah, certainly.
having to adjust the line and all of that.
No, well, I mean, I don't foresee any problems. If we need to do something to formalize it, we'll let you know and put it together.
Because when do you have to have this in, what's your?
It's, I think the order window is, I think it's mid-October. I don't remember if it's the week of the 14th or it's the week of the 19th, but it is a 7-day period that we have to get it in.
The 14th is on a weekend, so I'm not sure exactly when it starts.
Okay,
If we need something, we can get it on next week's agenda.
sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll start with Randy.
Rebecca, do you want to pull up the sales tax real quick? We'll just make this pretty quick. We won't go through all the slides. But for the sales tax that we received in September, which was for the month of July, did end up, second page, next page. We ended up the month, we were just short of 1% over year. So that is taking our year to date down to 2.7% higher than last year over year. Just the reason I just want to bring this up is when we did this first look at the budget, we did use a 2.9% rate, assuming that 23 would be 2.9% higher than 22, and that 24 would be 2.9% higher than 23. So it's not, it's about $1 million or so. Not even that much, excuse me. It's about 300,000 only that it affects revenue by. So I don't think we have to make a change yet in our budget, but it's just something to keep our minds on as we go forward. Before we finish the budget, we will have received October's. So we can, if we need to make changes, we can. So just more of an awareness of where we're at. Again, to hit this year's budget, we would have to get to the 3%. So right now we're running a little bit less than this year's budget. So that was the main thing I wanted to talk about on sales tax. I know I believe you all received it in your packet. I don't know if there's anything else, slides that anybody had a question on, but I just wanted to really tie this more back to the budget.
So how, at this rate, I mean,
At this rate, my budget
we're gonna be shortfall?
we will be shortfall in 23, and I will have over projected 24 by about $300,000.
Okay, so just a second, so two things.
Two things.
2023, what do we think our budget shortfall is gonna be?
About, I can't, let's see, does it say it up there? It should be probably about 300,000 roughly.
Okay, it says 580 on the.
Okay, 580.
slide.
So if you go to the
Oh,
next
no,
slide,
that's not on there.
go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Back. One page only.
Okay.
One more page. There. If we continue at this rate, we'll be about 580 short of our 23 budget.
Pretty good budgeting.
That's pretty close.
Estimate, I mean.
Throwing darts out there.
Exactly.
That's not bad.
Okay, and then as we look at 2024.
As we look at 24 and the budget that we
we'll
are
adjust
looking
that
at,
percentage.
we may need to adjust that. If we were to adjust it right now, our revenue would go down about $300,000.
Okay, thank you.
So there's sales tax in the quick nutshell. And I know we have the clerks coming at 9:30 for their presentation. So one more thing that we can talk about now with the interest income. So this was the interest income where we could use this money as one-time funds for capital. You had asked that we send out an email to the people controlling the funds affected. We did that. We did get a couple of responses. We have one Fund 107, which is Treasurer's Fund, which we still have legal looking at it to see if that could be pulled in. I'm not sure it can be. But even if it's not, it's only $10,000. That's not a big deal. The only other comments we got would have been from the self-insured funds. So like liability insurance, medical insurance and things like that. That is a lot of money. Knowing where their fund balances are, yes, it will maybe long-term affect where their fund balances, and we may have to raise rates long-term. But for the current area, I would say they still are funded enough that we don't have a short-term issue. So if we want to use this as one-time monies, at least for 24, we could do that and use it for some capital purchases.
Okay, and legally, those funds, we can do that.
Yeah, like Randy said, there's really only that one that we identified as having a potential issue, and Jim is, I think, still kind of nailing everything down on that. But otherwise, yeah, it looks.
We weren't looking at enterprise funds.
Correct. So this is assuming you do not want to touch the enterprise funds and that you do not want to touch the road fund. So that would be about $4.1 million that we would budget for capital next year if we were to do that.
And then I just want to make sure too, like any grant funds.
Great, any grants, so there are certain grants where the interest has to go with the grant. So we're not assuming that either.
Okay, I was, just.
For example, a
those
lot of the
auditor
elections
things that we-
grants, they specifically state that the interest needs that you earn on that money needs to be used for that purpose as well. Or you have to send it back. So I mean, yes.
It'll definitely, since it's a new thing that we're doing, the auditor's office will definitely look at it.
Yes,
And so I just want to make sure that
yes, we definitely can't
being
touch
compliant.
those things. So yeah. But and again, for the one fund that is at question, it is a very small amount. So even if we said it stays where it is, it's not going to change what we budget.
And then you guys are writing up kind of the theory of it, I guess, because we don't need to pass a resolution, or do we need to pass a resolution that we're doing this?
I'll defer to legal.
That is a very good question. I don't know that we've nailed that down, whether that's going to require separate action to do that, or if that can simply be something that budget manages through the budget process. Obviously, we'll figure that out here shortly, whether that's going to require unique action. But yeah, I mean, because we haven't done it before, because we haven't had this really, it was kind of a non-issue. So, you know, it's a novel one for us, but yeah, if it is an action, it won't be anything particularly difficult. I think just a resolution will kind of take care of it, so.
Very good.
So I guess we're getting to move forward that. Is that correct for 24?
Yes,
Okay.
but, I mean.
Yes.
Do I get 3 yeses?
Commissioner
Chris has
Jordan?
it.
Yeah, he raised his hand, that means yes.
I think you said you got several responses. What were the other responses?
I got a response from Ashley Cameron and also Steve Bartell. Again, they have control over the self-insurance funds. So the medical would be the big one, and also the liability fund. And then the only other response was from Mike Bowles in regards to one of the funds, Fund 107. So.
And I would say to mitigate the risk of taking the interest income, we choose the level to fund those funds at. As a county and you as the board, decide medical rates and liability insurance rates. And so we can very easily overcome that challenge, I would say.
And it's still something that they didn't know they were gonna have.
That is correct, but
So.
it doesn't put them in, I would say, I don't see it as a cash flow jeopardy this year. So.
Commissioner French?
Yes, I'm just voting yes.
Very good. Commissioner Waldron?
So I had just starred a couple ones. You had mentioned conservation features may be Have you followed up with Parks about the
They
interest
didn't,
on
they
that?
didn't make a comment
Okay.
about that.
Just if they wanted to roll that into their, you know, the other funds.
And again, even if conservation futures, if you want to buy property and they don't have the money there, the general fund can always put more money in. What you're really doing is making the money less restrictive, the interest income less restrictive, so you can use it for more purposes, like you can use it for capital, or if they need something, you could always give them more money.
True, true. The other question mark I had was on the behavioral health. It's quite a lot, 1.3 million. And do we need to follow up with the ASO regarding any of that?
I didn't get a comment back from them, so
Okay.
that's all I can say. Justin will be here this
He'll be
afternoon.
here.
But,
so
and
we
I
can
do know,
ask.
I had a conversation with
Okay.
Justin about it, that, again, he's just gotta make sure that the grants that they receive that require the interest to stay will stay.
So that dollar that
It might
dollar
be a
amount
little
may
bit
change.
lower,
Okay,
but
okay.
And then to follow up on your conservation futures question, if I can, I think since that's, I would see if legally we can, because that's a voted on, that's property tax, specific, that I'm not sure that we can.
all I remember from the ASO opinion was it has to be in the statutes. For example, vet services, it specifically states in the statute that the interest stays with that fund.
But since conservation futures is like the road fund, our property taxes,
We only backed out the road fund, just because we know we need money in roads.
right.
But I believe legally, based on what we've looked at so far, we could have done that interest as well.
Okay.
So,
how
but
much
we
was
will,
Conservation
do-
futures.
yes, we will look at
How much?
that.
It's only
Oh,
like
it's only,
26,000.
It's $22,000. Oops.
26. give or
Yeah,
take.
26,000.
That would be the only thing, just
Sure.
because since it, it had to be voted in by the citizens for that, to me, it's almost like a special, kind of like its own enterprise fund, but
Sure. No, we can look at that again specifically.
I would just want to make sure that we,
Yep, we'll double check that.
just because to me, that's a voter intent, so.
Well, the taxes are, but I'm not sure about the interest based upon the AGO opinion and the way the RCWs were written regarding that, but I'll defer that to Chris.
We'll follow up on both of those.
Okay.
The last comment was just, it's not opposing, putting the dollars towards capital, but I was thinking about the presentation we had from our, the need to update our water plan, our planning around, and you could put some of these, it could be a dedicated source of funding to put towards updating that water resources plan for the county. Like especially if you took from the stormwater or the water reclamation or the building and code enforcement.
We are not taking from those. So basically the enterprise
Oh,
funds,
are those
we backed those out.
already?
We backed all of those out.
Sorry, that's
No,
page
no,
2.
no.
Okay, never mind.
No problem. We had listed
But it could be a
everything.
source.
It
Page
could be.
1 could be a
So
source
The
for,
maximum we could
yeah.
have done was around $8 million.
Right, I see that now.
But based upon comments, we did back out those enterprise funds, and we also backed out the road fund based upon those comments.
But those remain with those enterprise
Yes,
funds. Okay,
that's correct.
Okay, no, I see
We're
it
not
now.
gonna touch them.
Okay, I think that was it.
And commissioners, we don't need a decision today, but it's good to hear the direction you'd like us to go. When we get to the capital plan, the 6-year, which Randy's gonna touch on today as well, this is just identifying a source of dollars to be able to prioritize in the capital fund. And then you could find another one-timer, such as the updating the coordinated water system plan that says, oh, we're gonna take 250 of this and place it here. So,
Exactly.
yep.
I'm comfortable with that.
And now clerk's office was on the list for today's presentation. Tim, you want to sit down here?
Oh, sure, okay. morning, everybody.
That's all right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey.
Hey, all set? All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We appreciate the time, and we'll keep it at 30 minutes or less and give you lots of time for questions towards the end. Gina, flip up the next slide for me. Okay, so we know it's budget time. The clerk's office has an ask. So what is our ask? Our ask is that we're asking for one additional courtroom clerk to support that 13th judge. And then I'm asking for a AT3 judgment clerk to handle the increase in the financial matters that'll be coming out of that judge's department. We had another clerk in there, but after talking with Randy and kind of agreeing that, I think 2 people is a reasonable start right now on what we're looking at. It's a volume and efficiency issue, but to be honest with you all, I've come in here over the past 6 or 7 years. I tell you what the challenge is. I tell you how I can fix it. Then I ask you, this is what I need to fix it. You have always given me what I've asked, and we've always fixed it for you, for what we agreed to. So the examples are, remember about 5 years ago, we came in and asked for 2 processors to create a protection order team. And you guys granted us that. We automated the entire system. We do 44 protection orders a day right now, which is, we're #1 in the state. That's nothing to brag about. But we handle all those protection orders for 3 different case types. We have none of the issues we used to have before, and everything is automated with police records. We are the model for the state right now. I came back in about 4 years ago and I asked you for an extra clerk for juvenile because we had 3 courtrooms and 2 clerks. You gave me that 3rd clerk, and as you know, the court runs all 3 courtrooms every day in a juvenile court with 2 commissioners and 1 judge, and they do that nonstop. About 3 years ago, I came back and I asked you for 2 processors, or maybe 2 years ago, 2 processors, because we're behind in continuances. We're constantly continuing cases. And I can tell you, I can cut 33% of those continuances. I can't do the other group, but I can do 33% of them. I'm working with Mike. We have cut 1/3 of all the continuances because you gave me those 2 extra processors. So I can get all that paperwork done and get it into the legal system within 24 hours. So the court has it, and we're not delayed or waiting on documents. Where documents are not there, the court needs to see, so the court doesn't continue cases and go right through them. So, and then the last one is I asked you for an extra clerk last year and you gave it to me to cover the pro tem judges. And the court's been bringing in pro tem judges with Judge Marino, Judge Clark. They bring in AR6 judges, which are elected judges. They bring in Judge Staub and Judge Sullivan from municipal court, and we clerk those courtrooms. And sometimes when we get in a bind, I'll go clerk that courtroom. But you gave me that extra clerk, so I can always cover those courtrooms when they pop up. And we're using that district courtroom, their 5th courtroom on Fridays for those extra judges that come in. So we've always asked for something, you've always given it to us, but we've always given you back what we promised we'd give you. So we're here again, looking for a courtroom clerk for the 13th judge and a judgment clerk to handle our finance side of the house. We have not added anybody to finance since 2008. And we're at the point now where we need a vote there a little bit. To your next slide real quick. Just some efficiencies. I know there's a lot of arguments about courtroom space. So we stay out of those arguments. We create our own courtroom space. We have civil commitment hearings. You got to do those. We do them remotely. We're saving a ton of money by not traveling to 15 different sites. Cars, gas, insurance, all that stuff, the liability with that. So we don't have courtrooms to do the hearings in. So the clerk's office created 2 courtrooms. We took 2 coat closets and we turned them into bona fide courtroom hearing rooms. And IT helped us put all electronics in there. So we do all our civil commitments in those 2 hearings. Scott got a chance to see the closets, but they're very functional.
Hearing rooms.
They're hearing rooms. They're closet courtrooms, but they work. And we can do all our civil commitment hearings remotely. And so it saves us a lot of time, a lot of effort, because we're short on spaces. I'll have Josh talk to you real quick about this idea he found out on the armored car vendors. And we talked about this about 2 years ago, but maybe run down on that one.
And this was kind of an item that we talked about last year, noticing that there are contracts already existing with other portions of the courthouse where they do something similar. So it would just be changing the SOPs and how we do items to kind of group our efforts. This was a partnership that we initiated with the Treasurer's Office because they also use an armored car service. Their schedule was very different than ours, as well as what pickups look like, but we had worked together over the course of several months and was able to consolidate both our contract with theirs, saving over $1,000 a month. A little extra work on our side to be able to catalog and from a risk element, but we were able to reduce that impact on our existing M&O by $12,000 by making that one change.
When I talked about 2 years, we talked to you guys that we were looking into these contracts, and that's what we found out, and that's how we made that adjustment, net savings for the county. On the next bullet down, just dismissals. We already talked about the continuances and pro tem judges. Dismissals, it's a statutory duty of mine. We're not built and staffed to handle it, unfortunately. But when cases are a year old and no action's taken on them, we can dismiss them. And it makes our court numbers look a whole lot better than what they've currently been looking at. So with the help of the court, we hired a person via a grant, and we got 5,300 of the 7,000 delinquent dismissals done. And so our numbers in our court-wise on court resolution of cases looks really, really good. But now that grant's expired, those people have gone away. One of the things that this judgment clerk will do is they can do some of the dismissals. I'll talk a little more about why they can do dismissals. So they can help us to continue doing that so we keep our records looking good for the court and our ability to resolve cases and not have all these cases pending that are well over a year old with no action taken on them. The Blake, you made me the county program Blake manager. We're doing great on Blake. The county has not spent a single dime. Thank you to Randy and the folks with the auditor's office and budget office helping us build this Blake program 3 years ago. Everything we have done, all our extraordinary expenses, all our extra time with our people, and all the refunds due to defendants have all been paid by the state. Granted, it is taxpayers' money, you don't be technical about it, it is, but the county's not paying for it. We haven't paid a dime for any of our Blake things because of our Blake programs and how we do that. Josh's two people, my two eligible people, do all the Blake actions. So the other 4 people in his office do the judgments. And that's why we're asking for that extra judgment clerk, because we got everybody inundated doing Blake right now. But again, we're doing real well in Blake. We're at 3,000 vacates and dismissals, about a third of the way there. And we have refunded on the cheat sheet here. Defendants have gotten 268,900, so call it 269. And the county has received 132,000 back in extra time in our extraordinary expenses. We're at $400,000 of money refunded back to us by the state. And we're still tracking that. And in our resentencings, we're about 200 resentencings, and we think we have 2,000 total to do. So we're getting there slowly. Okay, so let's flip over to, so these are the successes and efficiencies that we're trying to do for you. Next slide. Now here's the volume issue.
So what you're saying here is on the first part where it says 2022 Administrative Office of the Courts, that's data that the state provides every year where they track counties' new case volume. That's particularly important because of what a judgment clerk does. What a judgment clerk will do is initiate a case at its start, receipt the money that is due, and then ensure that that money then ends up to the treasurer. They would then take action as the process continues on. So every time there is a fiscal item that occurs on a case, it funnels back through the judgment clerk, including the final item, which would be associated out of a payout or a judgment. This also includes if you have restitution issued on a case, so they will be issuing checks on a weekly or monthly basis. So just because you see a new case listed there, that doesn't mean they touch it one time. They will touch the same case 4 or 5 times a week. And again, this is 4 individuals that's doing this. I did a little bit of digging and found a study that was from Pierce County, and I'll circle back around to that after we talk about the 2023 trending because of its importance. So they have a 10-year study that they conducted on the cost of a document and as that is handled by an individual and how that cost has increased since 2019. Now where that's important is when you go to the 2023 trending, you can see that we're averaging about 41,000 documents. This isn't pages. These are documents that have to be reviewed and have action taken on them. And when you saw on the first slide, the clerk's office does more than just file. There's a whole life cycle to how these things work. So when we're building an expense, we'll have contacts with customer service and with the individual that filed, and someone will ask 10, 20 questions for one document. So there's a lot of activity that goes in with it. Now, if you look at 2023, we're averaging 11.4% higher than 2022. That means this year alone, we have filed an additional 30,000 documents, not pages, but documents in comparison to 2022. And 21.8% of that is now digital, which is one of the clerk's office projects to bring us up to a digital standard to make it easier on the filer. And for just clarity and transparency, you have an individual who's all the way across the state, they no longer have to drive to the courthouse to initiate a process, that we can actually take care of that for them. But how does all of this equate? And I'll leave the documents here if anyone is interested in looking at it. But Pierce County, in their process with items, showed that the number of filings for their county, the number of filings per employee actually had decreased year over year. Now, every year their clerk's office was getting individuals added to the staff. Now, as a result, the total number of filings that they were processing were also decreasing. Now, the cost of the paper document itself and their life cycle, they approximated, it goes from in 2018, 2019 of approximately $8 a document to $11 a document. Now, if you take that same data and you apply it to what we have here, that $3 means that 43,000 documents that we filed in August cost an additional $130,000 to handle. And that's month over month. So when you look at what the total cost to actually begin to process things, it's more expensive. And as a whole, the total number of documents that you're seeing also when you compare 2019 to now, they've combined. They are much, much longer, and they're more in depth with the actions that need to be taken. So it's no longer a filing that's left there and then we wait for a particular tag mark to come back into action with it. You're talking about a document that might be 20 pages longer with 20 pages of requirements that have to be reviewed for an action to be taken.
You know, what's interesting is that on it just daily, when you calculate, and then IT did this, not us, IT did it because they were asked a question. We're doing 2,330 documents a day. That's a day. That's a lot. So we rank, as you see that chart that Josh put up there, we're number 2 in the state. No data for King. King's number 1, so there's no data for King. But Pierce is number 1, we're number 2. Snohomish is behind us. So, and they got 17 judges. So just so you know that the volume is, you know, another interesting point is on that 21%, that 21.8% for electronic filing, when we get to 23%, we're gonna make it mandatory for the attorneys. And we've told them that. The documents have to be mandatory to be filed. Not criminal yet, that's a different ballgame, but it will be on the other categories, civil, domestic, you know, probate, guardianship, and all that. So we can just keep kind of pushing that issue down the road to get to electronic filing fully, not just paper documents.
Did you say 23?
23%. We're at 21.8 right now.
How do you pick 23?
So I'm out.
Not 20, not 25.
No, that's a great question, and this will make you laugh. So I'm out there with my fellow clerks in Olympia arguing testimony, and then I said to them, I talked to King in Pierce County. I said, so I'm trying to find my number to make attorneys do it mandatory. I'm thinking 73, 74% before we make it mandatory. I said, what were your numbers? They just both started laughing at me. I said, you kidding me? The highest we ever got was 23%. And we had to make it mandatory to make the rest of the attorneys come on board and do it. So I had the exact opposite thought in that. They don't want to do it until you make it mandatory. So when we get to 23%, we're going to make it mandatory. So everything will be done electronically.
So when we're talking about filings, I guess, do you have it broken down by what types of filings?
Hang on. Will this work on the next one?
This
Yes,
is
it will.
a good intro for the next
Let's
page.
go to the next slide. You guys have seen this one before, but this is my favorite slide.
So this is where we are 2023 trending on new case volume. Again, this is information produced by the Administrative Office of the Courts. As you can see, we are again trending right behind Pierce County. King again does not submit their data, so they wouldn't be listed on here. This you'll see on the case types listed below where the volume is coming from. So this was calculated, they wait for the month to come to a complete close before they release this. So this was information from August. if you take the data and apply it using the consistent trends, we will pass 2022 for the total amount. What's interesting to notice when you compare this to prior years, for example, 2019 and 2018, where the types of cases are changing and where the volume is coming from. So in 19 and 18, there was a much heavier volume on new criminal cases. So if you're actually looking at the data for where this was in 2019, we're about half of that for criminal. So it has gone from the element of new case initiations to now there are more proceedings that occur within an existing case. So it makes the data quite interesting on where the work is coming from and where the efforts need to be consolidated.
If you look at Snohomish, they're number 3, or number 2, Snohomish is number 3. They're 800,000 in population. We beat them in every single category except for civil. But then again, they're more of a white collar community than we are. But every other category we beat Snohomish in. We're not too far behind Pierce in some of the categories. We actually beat Pierce in juvenile dependencies, and we beat Pierce in adoptions and parentage.
Just an interesting fun fact with that too, as you see where we are trending with items, Snohomish's budget is 3 times ours for the clerk's office, as well as for the personnel that they use to process items. If you go to the next page.
And I would also qualify that their population is much larger, so they have the tax base to be able to support that.
Oh, yeah.
Have the tax base to support.
I think they're 800,000 was the last number I saw. Okay, so go ahead, James, throw the next slide up. Any questions on this slide, by the way? What we're trending each month?
And Tim just said, Rebecca's the one who's changing this.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rebecca, go ahead, change it. I'm looking at Tina with her computer up front. Thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca got to see the closet courtrooms too. Right, so,
That's going
yeah.
back.
One more? Go the other way? There we go, all right. Oh, go back one. This one, okay. So we're back to the ask again. And so what I'm looking for is a courtroom clerk to handle the 13th judge, obviously, and then what's called an AT2 judgment clerk to handle the financial increase that we expect to see. And just remember that pay raise we got last year or this year on the pay raise? The reason my finance people did so much better than other finance people is because they do more than just finance. They build cases. They are processors too. And so that when Evergreen did their study, they added all that in, and that's why our AT2 judgment clerks got that higher jump. Because not only are they just handling money, we handle $40,000 a day. Only the treasurer does more than we do daily. But those AT2 judgment clerks also build cases. They build criminal cases, civil cases, family law cases, probate adoption cases, and they do taxes, tax warrants and stuff like that. So they got to build a case too, in addition to just handling the money. So that's why we need that extra judgment clerk. That'll give us 5 to handle that volume that's coming in right now.
Which is very helpful because it's more than just the financial piece. Most of the time when you think accounting or tech, you talk about, okay, well, you got the money that's coming in, well, you're the person that's going to get it to the right account. A big portion of it, which you can't properly represent on paper, so I'm going to do my best to try to explain this portion here, is the self-audit. So that little dot that's underneath all of the items that might actually get attention for what a judgment clerk does. This is where we keep our audit and review in-house, where we've got one judgment clerk has to review the work that's conducted by the other. And this is important because we are subject to state audit. Now, from a holistic perspective of dealing with the finances on a case, there are a lot of minutiae that go into that. But it also extends beyond what's done physically here in the courthouse. And this is where, if I imagine the conversations about DOC and AOC are rather ongoing, but DOC and AOC made some quite large errors this year. And our accounting techs here, our judgment clerks, caught it, and we took action month over month and continue to do it to prevent millions of dollars worth of liability because of our self-audit check. So we are investing now with every DOC till that drops what used to take small periods of time. We have to actually conduct a certification to make sure it's done correctly and in line with House Bill 1412. with 1169 and other items to make sure that we are protected here until the state figures out how to correct the error for sending items such as bills without the grounds to do
Just
it.
some background on that. So after because I do all the legislation for the clerks, after we got those bills ready, we reminded AOC that those laws change, who has to pay an LFO and who doesn't have to pay an LFO. And after 10 years, the LFOs expired. They went back to the old rules back in 2000 where you could extend it for 10 years and 10 years again. But now they can't do that anymore. So you only get the 10-year time. And when that time expires, that LFO is expired. You can't ask for it back. So we told AOC, here's the situation, here's the documentation. In Spokane alone, we have 36,000 LFO cases that we're handling. So long story short, they got their greater than and less than sign backwards on their computer programming. And they sent out bills. They billed everybody who had an expired case, not who had a current case. And of course, that is an enterprising moment for any civil attorney to see that wide open gap where you just billed people who were not required to pay. You just made them pay. Josh's team caught it. Another county caught it. We're the ones that informed AOC, you have really screwed up. And it took us, we're still cleaning it up. But we're making sure that people that sent in money on an expired case, we return their money back to them. So they're not paying on these cases. We had 12,000 in change on cases that we had to adjudicate. So we did that, and unfortunately, 2 weeks later, DOC did the exact same thing on their LFO billing. So what we was talking about is these internal processes that we do, these 4 people catches this stuff, and it was in Benton County that alerted DOC to that.
So did they reimburse for the time that it cost you guys to do all that?
No. They won't do it, no. Because these were non-Blake cases, so they won't do it.
Right, but it's their issue.
Because they're a mistake. But the point is the liability could come down on the county. Because the bills are in my name.
Right,
So
no, that's why.
the billing is all in my name.
I would accumulate that and I think we should send a bill to them. They can say no, but at least then we put them on notice that it was their mistake. This is how much it cost us. And
We did,
I mean, you're with the clerk's office, but I would think that would be appropriate, just for them to know how much this really cost.
but what we did to protect the counties as best we could was we basically directed them to send a letter to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court stating this is the error they made, so that if a lawsuit started, there could be some discussions before it got kind of like when Blake first came out, Civil Survivor immediately sued all 39 county clerks. And then the Supreme Court said, no, stop, no. They get a chance to fix it first. So they did get a letter. They did send a letter to the Chief Justice explaining this is what happened. That's pretty good for us, but I know what you're saying. But that's just an example of the things that a judgment clerk would do. That's the reason why I'm asking, Randy asked me to prioritize. Obviously, I need that clerk for the 13th courtroom. That's an obvious given, but I do need a judgment clerk to keep up with this load. We're still doing Blake, as you know, we're still doing LFOs, as you know, we got the 2 people doing that. This will give me 5 people that can handle the front counter for processing, the financial counter, doing the processing and doing the judgments, doing the work necessary for these cases. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch, there's also the certificate of discharge, if you guys are familiar with that, where a person can get their entire case cleaned up, provided they meet certain statutory requirements, and all that starts with the clerk's office and then goes to the prosecutor and then goes to DOC and then goes to the court. So a lot of those will be coming in now because of the new laws. So if you're looking for a cost figure, I say it's not much, but I know you're dealing with a lot bigger things, but a courtroom clerk is $53,562, and a judgment accounting tech clerk is $55,684. So about $110,000 for these 2 positions. We have. Go ahead, Gina.
Tim, this court clerk though is in addition to the 13th judge court clerk that we already have in the budget.
No. This is the 13th.
Okay, so we already have one in the budget, so your only ask is just for the judgment clerk then.
I think that It's fair. I mean, yes, could I use that other courtroom clerk? Yeah, because now I'll have 13 judges and I'll have the pro tem judges, Marino and Clark and all those folks still coming in. So yeah, if, you know, an extra clerk always helps out, but talking with everybody, I understand the financial situation. I know there's some tough decisions that have to be made, so I'm trying to make this, you know, a reasonable request. And so if that 13th judge, court clerk is already in the budget, then the big ask right now is to get that extra judgment clerk. That would be the ask. And if you're so kind and gracious and want to give me an extra clerk, I will take that in a heartbeat too. But I know there's other requests going on. I know you got other issues to deal with. So the main ask is that judgment clerk. That's what I need then.
Yeah, I was just kind of confused about what's in the budget book.
We did put the 13.
So one is in there, but
Yes.
the other is not.
Correct.
Okay. So it has 60 authorized, 58 funded. So you'd want to go up to 59 funded.
We'll go to one more authorized, actually. There, the two quote unfunded is their typical vacancy adjustment.
Okay,
Because there's always
a few.
turnover. We will spend typically less cost than the total, but they would be asking for an additional authorized and funded person, yes. And then we have the vacancy adjustment that if they don't have those vacancies, we'll be coming back and say, we were wrong on the vacancy adjustment, we need to put additional budget out there for that.
How many current judgment clerks do you have?
We have four.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, Tim, you've always performed and really congratulate you on the excellent shop that you run and stuff. I was wondering if you would be willing to trade another budget clerk for your closet courtroom, because we're looking for another courtroom. No, just a thought.
Oh, Commissioner, I gotta be honest with you. If my old LFO room that used to be the old CEO office that I think Commissioner Waldrop is in right now, that used to be my old LFO office, if that's too small for a courtroom, these closets are 1/3 that size.
No, she moved. She's over.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that's becoming a
So-
courtroom this year.
Okay, so that'll be a courtroom. So my closet courtrooms are 1/3 of that room's size. But I only need a clerk in there so I can record, document, handle the evidence, do the minutes, and record the hearings. And it's all done by Zoom.
Right.
So, I mean, it's actually using some modernization in our favor. Because again, it's a lot of money traveling out to the 50. And then the other thing I was talking with Scott about, it's just a nuance. You drive out to these sites, 15 different sites, most of them are medical sites. They're not always ready to bring a defendant down for a hearing. There's a lot of issues going on, and so your clerk and your commissioner just sat out there for hours sometimes, waiting. That's a lot of wasted time. So that's all, everything's remote now. Also, commitment is done remotely. Okay. We do have to go out to Eastern State Hospital to do certain hearings. We are required to do that by law.
So can I ask, so with these closet courtrooms, what was the reason, why do they need, is there a reason why they need a dedicated room, a space for just one person?
Right,
Like that, why that can't be done at a desk?
Well, because we're recording the hearings and
Okay,
everything's going on. So they're sitting out in my common area and people are talking. That's going to interfere with the recordings of the hearings. We got to make sure recordings are good. In
okay,
case somebody wants to appeal the case, it's got to be a clear recording.
okay,
We have some ideas about maybe working better on the recordings. Right now, we use the small tape recorders
yeah,
because FTR Gold can't fit in there, but maybe we can work with IT and maybe get it recorded onto the Zoom hearing without it going into the cloud, because these are confidential cases. So because they're confidential, we're stuck with the recorders.
okay.
Little handheld recorder.
And then you can't
So-
be in an open space either.
But it didn't interfere.
But it's just one person. If that one person were to put headphones on and use the recorder on Zoom, is your clerk speaking it into, or are they just there to listen and dictate and sort of?
They'll
do
speak
that?
if the judge or commissioner asks them a question.
Okay.
Normally they're just listening
Okay,
and they have the documents in front of them. They'll take the minutes and they're
Yes.
recording the hearing. And then one courtroom closet has actually 2 desks. So they
Okay.
put the headsets on and work independently.
okay,
The other one was a old file room that's upstairs in the vault. So I just took space that I could restructure.
Okay.
Make it into hearing rooms. That way I don't interfere with the space that's already allocated. Because if you remember my back space back there?
Yep.
I don't have a whole lot of room left to put people back there anymore.
Okay.
We've used up all our space.
Okay.
So that's why this worked out pretty well. Because they can close the door, and they can do their hearings, and nobody will bother them.
Okay.
And that brings us to our final page, which is how are things going now with existing staffing and volume? Knowing that dealing with an additional judge is going to mean higher volume and higher numbers. So we're approximately 2 weeks behind on building judgments. And then when the double check portion of this, because again, once we build the judgment, that's money that has to be receipted in. Money, because we don't receipt that out with any professional services from an outside organization. So that has to be double checked to make sure that it's receipted properly. So an additional 2 weeks from there. When we're looking at our budget as a whole, unfortunately, last year we didn't have any increase to our M&O budget, so we've done the best with what we had. With restructuring of particular things such as the armored car services, putting a lot of pressure on banking services to push those items down, which that's my background, is working with banks. So I was able to reduce that cost significantly. But we're still trending over budget for M&O, which is approximately 12.9%. Now I put 2 lines on there so that it's more than just a percentage, but you can actually see what these are. If we utilize the money that we have set aside for capital this year to fund our statutory requirements, we'll still over our M&O budget by approximately $23,000. If we keep our capital allotment for the capital that it was meant to be for, then we'll be $45,000 over budget. And just a reminder, we don't have any line items for things such as postage, even though we send all of the S-cheat items, and we send every single check for restitution via mail. So every single one of those has an expense that goes with it. And then for the same thing with juvenile dependencies. So we have currently no money allotted in our budget for that, but we are required to publish them, which runs anywhere and it can exceed over $20,000 a year. So these are line items that we're trying to make work.
And we talked to Randy, he knows about these.
So I guess that would be my question is like, if those are known statutorily required items, they need to be in the budget and we have to figure it out. I don't want, I mean, it's getting back to years ago, we had these unrealistic budgets because we weren't putting everything in that actually needed to be in there. So we could, because especially you as an independent elected, once we say that's your budget, and you have to live within it. But if we're not realistic, then what's the point of a budget?
Yeah, well, we got quite a few dependencies this year, so we've been working closely with Randy and his team to help us on that one.
But I mean, if we have postage that we know is gonna happen, but we're not budgeting for it, because we don't have a budget line item, that's a problem for me with the budget. So, I mean, we've gotta be realistic as to what these budgets are actually costing us. What, again, statutorily that, because those are things we can't cut, we still have to be doing. And they've gotta be in the budget. And to say that we don't have a line item, so we're not budgeting for it is not a good budget methodology, and I wouldn't expect that would be what we'd be continuing to do. I don't know, Randy, I think that's probably the first time you're hearing that there isn't a line item for some of those things. I mean, because then it just forces these budget amendments, and then your original budget isn't even realistic to start with, and that's what we need to know as we set the budget for 2024, what the realistic budget is today. So I would say, put those things in there that and state it's statutorily required, and we need to have that line item. Because just because it hasn't been there in the past doesn't mean it shouldn't be there, because you're still paying for it.
Right.
So how are you paying for it within your current budget? So maybe there is other places it's sitting, but it should be sitting as a line item for that.
Mary, their current budget is right around the 22 actual, which is for M&O, which is significantly more than the 23 budget. So the 23 budget was definitely unrealistic. I think this one is much closer. We're tracking where we actually spent in 22. We do need to watch 23, and we may need to make some tweaks, but at least this budget is more realistic than last year's was.
Okay. And then, like I said, just making sure we have a line item. If it's postage, it should be there
And
for them.
I'm more concerned about the total dollars versus the detail, how you move it around inside. I'm looking more at the total dollars for services or things like that.
Yeah, and I think for us as commissioners, we've got to be realistic as to, the statutory requirements, that those are all there appropriately, so. Okay. Commissioner Jordan?
This might be, well, first of all, thank you to Tim and your team for presenting, really appreciate it. This might be more of a Randy question, but is there a kind of standard definition of M&O? Because it sounds like in the clerk's office, certain postage expenses and other things that might be M&O are legal requirements, right, that really need to be done, but in other departments, it may not be the same legal need. So I was just curious about when you're working with the departments, how do we define M&O?
M&O would be there's supplies and the services. So it would be from an accountant standpoint, it's an account that starts with a 3 or a 4. I know that doesn't help you much, but it'd be like office supplies, professional services, their banking services. That would be a service that's M&O. That is in contrast to salaries and benefits or to capital. So it's basically anything that's not one of those other two.
And that M&L will be different for different departments because they have different operating needs. Elections will look totally different than the clerk's office. So, but it's the maintenance and operating costs with, again, like Randy said, separate than the staffing and capital. So that's why they tend to be smaller, just because our biggest part of any budget is the staffing, salary and wages. And then the M&O tends to be, again, just the day-to-day operation stuff that you have to have, supplies, all of that.
I think for me, it's like 96% is staffing and salaries, and like 4% is M&O. Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you. I mean, I know you guys worked really hard and you've worked really hard over the years to be as efficient and to help in areas that you can. And I think your work at the state level with your organization, association.
It's been a lot of fun.
But it's so helpful in seeing what other areas, other people are doing to try to make those efficiencies here. So I just want to say thank you.
This year, I know I talked to Randy, there will be a concerted effort to address the LFO grants coming from the state. So without those grants, you're not going to have LFO programs anymore. So we'll be engaging the state on that one pretty heavily. That's it. That's becoming a very heated argument. LFO has always been a heater.
Amber and then Chris.
Oh yeah, thank you. Very detailed, down to the number of documents. I really appreciate that.
I got a great financial manager.
Yes.
That's why.
So I guess question, when you hit that magic 23% number, how do you imagine that changing anything related to staffing or efficiencies, over the next 5 years?
We have built ourselves to get to that point where we are now, so nothing will change for us. Documents will just come in electronically. The timeliness of documents will be better for the court. That's a big thing. Protection orders, for example, they want to start doing that by electronic means. So this will be just much better. I'll help speed things up with the court. Staffing for me, I'm right at where I need to be at to handle.
You still have to, the staff still has to review all those
Well, we
documents.
have to look at them, right, because they're not done correctly, we can't submit it to the court.
Right.
That's the only challenge.
But hopefully it speeds up the court process.
I think it will enable them to see more documents faster electronically, because what happens is you get some attorneys that are really, they'll do electronic filing, and then it'll bring in a paper filing the next day. And you're like, okay, you already filed this. I just want to make sure it gets in. Okay, it is in. But yeah, so that should eliminate that. That's what I'm hoping for.
Commissioner Jordan?
Two things. I just have a comment and a question. The comment is, I think the statistic about, is it Snohomish County having a bigger budget, despite the fact that you guys have a high number of cases, just speaks to the dedication and hard work of your office. So that's my comment. Thank you. Question is, I know you guys have been working on some language services, language line, additional customer service pieces. What is that looking like in terms of budget impact?
So budget would be 98 cents a minute if it's used. And I think the person that uses language line the most would be the prosecutor's office by a long shot. So I'm not expecting that to be a huge cost right now. I just need to track it to see what it looks like, because I have no idea what it's going to look like. But maybe assisting 3 people a week for about 4 minutes at 98 cents a minute. That's kind of what I think we'll see. So we're in pretty good shape there at the moment. You know, we got the contracts on, IT's installed the phone, we're ready to go.
Okay, so you got it up and ready to
Yeah,
go.
we're up and we're running.
Good, thank you.
And then just one final, so you said you're at 21.8% on your way to 23. Do you suspect you'll get to 23 by the end of the year?
Easily.
Okay, so so calendar year 24 will be all
That would
online
be the
spend.
goal.
Okay.
I'm gonna start putting some more articles in the calendar, call our attorneys, newspaper, just reminding them that this is what we agreed to, this is what we talked about 2 years ago. Because I asked them to do a survey and help me implement what they want in e-filings that are part of the equation. So I just remind them each time as things go on. So I would say, yeah, I would think starting January, it'll be mandatory for the attorneys.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Except for criminal, not criminal cases. Everything but criminal. We have a different dynamic in criminal cases.
And just a little piece to add to that. So when we started tracking this in 2021, we were at 11.2%. So where we are right now in terms of the 21.8 is the concept of adjusting month over month. So we actually track it on a monthly basis, and then we reach out to the firms that we note are not using the services for direct communication to try and drive to that 23.
Great, I'm not seeing any other questions, so thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for coming down. Randy.
Commissioners, I just emailed each of you a spreadsheet, which is basically the eye chart I'm going to be handing out. This is on the mental health sales tax. So this is a work in progress. We finished it up this morning, so I know some of the back data isn't going to be complete as in regard to fund balance and things like that. But we've asked Justin to be here because I know mental health sales tax is a conversation that you guys wanted to have. And if we are going to dedicate more money to that, we definitely need Justin here because he understands what programs we already have in place, what we still need, you know, what you can use that money for. So just to summarize it, kick it off before, and then I'm gonna step out. It looks like when we start 24, we will have between monies, we have the mental health sales tax in a couple of different funds, but we anticipate to have around $23.7 million in fund balance in mental health sales tax. This next year, we expect to collect about 16.8 million, and based on our current fundings that we've already dedicated to, we will spend about 13.7 of that. So we will have about $3 million every year that we are currently not spending that we're bringing in. Plus, we have 23 million of fund balance. So even if we left 3 million in there for cash flow, you could use 20 million of your fund balance, plus you have $3 million a year of programs that you could commit to without even touching your fund balance. So with that, I will step aside, let you ask Justin any questions or let him give comments, thoughts that you have on what you would like to do with mental health sales tax.
So I just, I know from, I went from being the regional support network to the BHASO, that there's a certain amount of fund balance that's required for the payouts for Medicaid that we don't get reimbursed for. And so I think it's like up to 2 years that can take. So I don't know what that number is, but I know that's part of why there was a big fund balance even back then under the RSN.
So this would be the incurred but not reported then?
Correct. There is a liability that, for especially with inpatients, that take up to 24 months, dependent upon the initial and then the subsequent adjudication process, that would be subject for liability. And then there's also if in the future the board had chose, or this went a different route, there's also the closing liabilities that would also apply. So in that, we actually did a review of that back in 2019, 2020. And at that time, we had a carryover balance we put towards that, which was, I think at the time when we closed the BHL and became the ASL, it was $5 million. And we at the time had, because of cash flow from the state, a liability of about 12 million that we anticipated would need to ensure no liability incurred on the county's general fund. Since that time, we've gotten a little bit more aware of what the cost will be incurred with the ASO, and also we've got a little bit more fund from the state to cover certain things, generally with being able to negotiate that. So with a greater understanding of what those costs would be over the last 5 years, we believe that would not be 12 million. I think safely be closer to 6 or 7 million. Again, we would need to do a full review looking at current trends over the last 5 years, but I think at the last time we looked, safely, liability reserves would need to be near the 6 to 7 million mark.
So I'd want to be conservative, but so we would.
So of that 23, then you'd have like 16 that you could still.
Yes, but I mean, that's where it's like, I want to make sure that when we're talking about that number, we pull out.
The IBNR is not built into the spreadsheet, that's correct.
So that's part of what I just want to make sure we're doing, because that has to be there, because I don't want to have that
We'll adjust the spreadsheet for that number.
liability there.
Can I ask a question on that? Sure. So is it related to mental health sales tax or unrelated? Are these costs specifically for operating the BHASO?
Yes and yes. So there's a unique aspect to that, right? So when we took on the ASO, it's related to the ASO specifically for all of those. But if it came down to the ASO closed and the worst case scenario occurred, then it would be on the county then, if there wasn't enough GSF and or Medicaid dollars to, at the time, fund any of those liabilities that existed. And because it's 2 years out, the state wouldn't guarantee a certain amount. We'd only be able to project. So at this point, with those that are currently there, as well as the potential liabilities, it is both of those. It does apply, but also we wouldn't have the best guess on that until we knew at the time that occurred what general safe fund dollars from the state we received to cover those.
Okay, so what I was getting to is there's a liability that exists in the $6 to $7 million range. There's probably a timing of cash flows that you need for working capital in the BHSO. The mental health sales tax has helped to support that timing of cash flows in the BHSO. Is that fair to say?
Yes, specific to Spokane County.
Okay, all right, so I just want to make sure there was a good understanding of the difference between the two. It's mental health sales tax is not the liability on it, but it's been used in the BHSO to help kind of utilize the working capital, if you will, working capital needs as reimbursements come in year over year.
It's the buffer.
Yeah, the buffer, yes.
I mean,
Does that make
because
sense?
ultimately it's all citizens' dollars that is responsible for all of this. So yes.
Follow-up question and just make sure I understand. So the mental health sales tax cannot be used to pay those costs, but we're just using it for cash flow?
No.
Or mental health sales tax can be used to pay those things?
well, those costs are direct services.
Okay.
So they're used for direct services. So this is the unique part, because they are integrated, right? At any given time, we get a certain flow, especially proviso dollars that are specifically tied to a thing, right? If the state then adjusts those or we're unable to expend those, the only funds we have for Spokane County residents that are flexible is mental health sales tax. And because inpatient services for Spokane County residents fluctuate from year to year, to Scott's point, we use those to balance whatever that we are either our requirements for involuntary treatment service increase this side, so we paid for inpatient on this side, and so we use those in balance, always deferring to using state dollars when available. Oftentimes what we find is the state is doing more provisos, which limit the accessibility of those funds. Just recently, of course, for example, the SRSC, Regional Stabilization Center, we were trying to find state and federal dollars to pay for that, which we've done historically. But the challenges associated with those federal dollars coming out came too onerous. We were looking at, well, we would need to use mental sales tax, so there wasn't a disproportionate effect to that facility. But then I was able to convince the state to give us additional money, so we were able to cover that with acute diversion dollars that the state gives us in proviso. So it's kind of this back and forth.
So how many ASOs are there across the state?
Um,
And do they all have a mental health, like how are the other ASOs managing their cash flow?
Well, so I can tell you on some of them
I mean, some of them do have a mental health sales tax, I'm assuming, that they can.
well, most do. The problem is that when 2018 to 19, when we went from an early adopter, going from the RSN model to the BHASO, some counties contracted it out. So the counties are not doing it. And all the mental health sales tax dollars were going to that new organization. And that was part of the contract, was that their 1/10 was going to them. So I know like Clark County did that and have regretted it. Because they've lost control of those dollars. But that company that is doing that is a for-profit company. And so they required, that they're gonna provide these services, but they need the 1/10 money to go with it.
Well, I don't think every county gave the 1/10, but some did.
Some did.
Yeah, because I remember some of the Wasatch, or early, going way back, some of those early Wasatch breakout sessions were like, that 1/10 is not that entity's money. That is your money to determine how you spend it to benefit your, so, but yeah, some of them did hand over those dollars.
So
Well, most of them did, because it literally, they were requiring it as to then be the contractor.
So is it fair to say what we've done here is decide to use, like you're saying, we're coordinating different types of funding to provide behavioral health services. And as much as possible, we are getting reimbursed through the ASO for anything we can from the state.
Yeah, I think fundamentally it's a idea of structure, right? So King County and Spokane County have maintained full control over the BHASOs. And so they were able to have control over the mental sales tax and other funds the state gives them.
Got it.
The other ones gave it to LLCs and or to for-profit entities like Carelon. Now, they had to make the decision to give control over or to maintain it, and that was a constant back and forth. Some have now retained it, but ultimately responsibility for the services still ended up coming back to the county. So to Clark County, the Carelon wasn't able to maintain a crisis service, so the county ended up reverting to take control. But they didn't have the state dollars to support it, so they're using their local dollars. So the issue with Spokane County in a better position is to be, say, one authority over those funds on both sides.
Okay.
In that, we do our best to always default to the state and use mental sales tax as a last resort.
Got it.
In the early years in 2019, we only used it as a potentiality, so no liability came on the county's general fund. But after the last 5 years, we realized that we were being very conservative on that to prevent that.
And that's why we have this fund balance.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then secondly to that, we've seen more reserves be able to come in over the last 4 years than we anticipated. So both of those compounded to now have this fund balance.
Thank you.
Yeah, 'cause definitely during COVID, the
There was
sales tax dollars were higher than we
Right.
anticipated.
And then there was maybe some more, there were a couple of years, right, where the legislature funded more behavioral health programs. So we were able to take advantage of that.
Yes, and we maximize that to the best of our ability.
And we have the ability to, I would say, braid funds, but we can't supplant. So what Justin and his knowledge and team work very hard to make sure that we're, braiding those funds appropriately, not supplanting, because we can't do that with Medicaid, and all of that, but really taking it, using it to the best of our ability.
And then also fundamentally, sometimes it's a decision so that either the state and or federal government doesn't have direct authority control that would disproportionately affect county residents, right? So there are times when we have to juggle between, we can't pay a provider because of the rules associated with federal dollars being within a reportable time period, which would disproportionately affect the service. So we'll use mental sales tax at the time for those residents so that that service is provided, come back and then fund additional services with the federal dollars. So it's a back and forth between the two. Ultimately, so Spokane County residents don't see any impact.
And then Commissioner French.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add a little emphasis to what Commissioner Kearns was saying, because when we were challenged with the decision to whether we go to the BHO or AHO, I mean, we had a lot of debate and investigation about how those funds were ultimately going to be used and distributed and who was going to be in control of them. And I think, all three of us made the right decision by going the course we did. And now, you look at how we've been able to use these funds and be able to prioritize them the way that they meet community needs, as opposed to prioritizing them the way they met the nonprofits' needs, and deliver services to the community that otherwise would have been consumed in administrative costs by the other agencies. I mean, we've barely been able to make sure that the taxpayers got full value of the dollars that they're paying in this mental health tax and stuff. So I just want to, this was not an easy decision, and we really wrestled with it for many, many months until we came to the construction that we did. And as you can see, I think it was the right decision. And other counties, as Commissioner Cooney had indicated, other counties are regretting the fact that they gave up control of these dollars.
Seems like that was ages ago. Seems like a lifetime ago that we did that.
It was when I first became commissioner and trying to research, and I talked to lots of people at that time. It was crazy. So I think, we definitely did. I guess the other thing I would say too is as we have these dollars, the fund ballot projects with the school system right now, it allows us those opportunities that if we fully spend it all, then you don't have the opportunities to do things that could be new and innovative for our community. So I, just caution that it's just because it's there doesn't mean it has to be spent. It just means we need to be thoughtful in how we spend them. But as we look at Measure 1, and if Measure 1 passes, there's some opportunity too within our criminal justice system. I know we already use some within our criminal justice system now. What are those other opportunities as we look forward? That you have a really good knowledge of what the opportunities, the gaps in our community are. Like one of the other pilots that we're doing right now is with VOA.
Correct.
On having a therapist at VOA at Hope House, so women aren't having to go to get to an appointment, schedule an appointment, all those things, that it's in-house, so it makes it easier. And so that's a pilot that we're doing out of these dollars right now, seeing that there was a gap. So I just, just because we have a big fund, it looks like we have a big fund balance, as we know, it can go quickly, or, it's one of those, and then once it's gone, it's gone. And so then you don't have those opportunities that can come forward. Commissioner Waldron.
So I don't know if it's right for right now, but one question I have is about expenditures related to the mental health services in the jail. So just at some point, just to get some more history on that, the evolution of those dollars, but maybe we'll finish up with. So to that point though, something we could think about would be putting aside a certain amount each year that we do ask the community for innovative applications for the use of the dollars, and some sort of process where we would decide if we want to do, different new programs, like you're saying, or pilot programs. Because I don't know how that's happened in the past, but it seems like some of these seem like they've been really successful, like the school-based services. So that's just something to me that comes to mind that might be something, again, not the whole 16 million.
Right.
But
no.
like opening up a process where we could have it be different groups that are trying to advance more mental health care in their programming.
And I would say like both the pilots right now are structured in a means of showing the need, that then looking to the state to help fund in the future. So it's not going to be completely funded out of mental health sales tax. Because in order to, with a pilot, you're doing it for a purpose to get the data to show that, and like in the case of VOA, I mean, really the state should be paying for that. But they're not, so it's trying to come up with a means of, it's gotta be a
Or a
program that
case,
can.
or a case to be made to be reimbursed by Medicaid or something.
So that's both these pilots, I think we see the opportunity there and knew that going into it, that this would provide that, the data to support the need and how we could have better outcomes. And the state should be paying, it should be Medicaid. But trying to get the state sometimes, you gotta get the data.
And prior to 2019, because I can't speak to how they were utilized previous to that, but since I've taken over, I've really taken a look at what are the needs in the community and building up to address those, and then leveraging existing avenues by which we get feedback. So for example, we're going to be opening this up for the opioid dollars. It's a great opportunity to take community feedback, and if we don't utilize the opioid dollars for that, still use that feedback to support and educate other avenues. Commissioners then have flexibility to use other funds to support if they see a program or need that they feel is necessary. And then we evaluate to an extensive degree what other sources of funding and need exists. So for the school-based project and for the BHTSP, it's a long name, I won't go into it, but we looked at is there any fund source, who's paying it, and what is the greatest need and impact to Spokane County residents? And that's how it was decided. And that took over a year to evaluate before we implemented it, before we brought it to the board. I think that's where, when we looked through those, we're pretty exhaustive. And then we evaluate executive leadership before we decide to present to the board, saying, is this what really benefits Spokane County?
Well, maybe if we're gonna do that process of getting feedback on the opioid dollars, the settlement dollars, maybe we should make it clear we would like to get suggestions around both treatment and, for mental health and substance use treatment. Like, what are some innovative things people would like to do? Because then we could evaluate whether mental health sales tax or the opioid treatment dollars would be the appropriate. Because if we just ask for related to substance use treatment, we might get limited. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, and we can
I
definitely.
don't know if you've started to put together that.
Well, we have, and we're in the process. I could do that tomorrow. I think it's a little bit more of a making sure we have all those puzzles pieces from all the different leadership and partners that are working on this. I think the challenge then is this: we always leverage existing process that we have, but oftentimes too, like the mental sales tax, such clear and distinct statutory language that the opioid dollars don't have. More free. And so ensuring that we ask that, we always have to make sure it doesn't conflate the two, because they may say it's great if we just paid for people to have, dogs or therapy in there. Well, we can't do that because there's not a direct service or therapy that identifies a mental sales tax. Maybe opioid dollars could be used for that. Or equine therapy, which actually technically is a identified behavioral treatment option for mental health, but wouldn't be for opioid dollars. So there's various different things that we have to be mindful of, but we did include language with a common behavioral health aspect or co-occurring, which generally includes both.
Okay.
And I think, just at least for me, like as community people have come and said, oh, we have this need and we need this money, I'm always like, okay, you gotta go talk to Justin. he will know if there's the gap or if, you know, if they can, I mean, I think that's with BOA. You know, Fawn, you know, I had a conversation with Fawn and then I'm like, well, you need to go talk to Justin to see if there's this gap. And so then that's the process for that. On the school, I think you run it. You know, we've been talking about youth mental health. What are the things out there that we could do? But you know, Justin really was the one who could see what things were out there, like the survey, and how could we do it and do it better. So for me, it's always been having, you know, getting the information to Justin to let their team then analyze and see if, you know, what the possibilities are.
And I think that's a benefit of having the ASO under the one county roof, because when we did that with both Homeless Outreach and Recovery Navigator, which connects people to substance use services, I was able to get $2.5 million from the state, and that's funding it annually, which is all flowing into Spokane County without you having to use mineral sales tax. And so by utilizing that, we're able to find other fund sources, which then means the fund balance, but then the commissioner is able to decide extra programs or additional enhancing without needing to take on that responsibility that the state should be having the burden. So in that reality, that's what we try to do. Is really look at what can pay for it first and then move forward from there.
I was just thinking, in a way to make that a little bit more of a formal process. Like I had someone reach out to me and she was trying to find information out about mental health sales tax for an organization she's working with, and I sent her to Justin. But it's just a little bit kind of random.
Yeah.
So I just think it'd be, maybe we formalize that somehow and say, if you have inquiries, you know, about different programs, you know, here's how to forward your inquiry or forward your question or something. So it's just a little bit more formalized.
Yes.
Like a random text from somebody that I forwarded Justin, you know.
Yes.
So that's just my thought. But I agree that running stuff through Justin for his expertise and for identifying if there's other funding that might be able to pay for it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as you know, as a commissioner now and former city council, I mean, we're always going to get those people, you know, coming up with things, and which is why it's still just, I think the process is, you know, would be to have it go through Justin, you know, to start. So.
And whenever those do come through, if it ever reaches that threshold, usually dump in the budget office like, hey, FYI, and then of course with Scott and the executive team today, does this make sense for Spokane County? We would never accept any of those right out the gate without that clear, like we're all on the same page before we proceed forward with beginning to look at, do we present it to the board? So that there, I think, is more of a conversation. And Jeff's been great about this too. He knows the ins and outs on quite a bit of areas, so bouncing ideas off him is obviously what occurs. So in that way, there's more communication and collaborative method to ensure that we're, again, why we have a fund balance too, because we're really good at finding other sources.
Alan.
Yes, I'm going to start with Commissioner French and then Commissioner Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, Justin finished his comments with, I think, a statement that is just critical. We have a fund balance because we've been very, very diligent about leveraging other dollars. And I'm a little reluctant. In fact, I'm very reluctant about going back and saying, hey, we got money. How do you want to spend it? No. We've been very deliberative about how do we invest in programs, you know, the stabilization facility or any of a number of programs with those mental health dollars. We've been very strategic and stuff. And so I just commend Justin for his diligence and you know, it's better to spend other people's money than it is to spend our taxpayers' money. Anyway, thank you.
Commissioner Jordan.
It seems like there is I don't disagree at all with the being cautious and leveraging other funds. It does seem like there is a fairly large balance in the bank and a fairly decent sized cushion on a yearly basis that could be examined for investments. And so I just wanted to ask Justin, knowing we're not in we're just getting the spreadsheet this morning and looking this over and talking about it for the first time in this way. But knowing that we're at that brainstorming phase, are there any ideas that you're most interested in at the moment, or possible investments or needs?
I have a dozen or so always floating around in my head. So yes, off the top of my head, we have respite programs for Spokane County youth that we ended up giving up to the state in 2019. They promised to follow through and they didn't. And that's a caregiver respite for families and youth who need support so the youth don't go into inpatient. That's going to be something I'm going to present to the board in the future. And what a wonderful long-term commitment to the residents and taxpayers of Spokane County to say, we're going to support you so you can have a break and we'll take care of your kids for a short period of time. It's an investment in our future. There's other programs like the Maddie's Place. That's going to keep coming up because my heart is in what a benefit it can provide to our community. So I'll be bringing that forward. And then we also are looking at co-responder programs as we look to first responders, specifically the fire, where we can divert people in the street from going to an inpatient setting, hospital, ER, and going into their available resources like the SRSC or other avenues that are inpatient, preventing continued use, which at this point is overwhelming the ER and law enforcement's ability to respond. And it's, in my view, a misappropriation of what those services were meant for. So yes, 100%, but I also think we need to be careful and mindful that if we make investments like the school-based project and into BHTSP, that we have to be mindful the state may not come through. So our commitment is to be sustainable. You know, we commit to the individuals. We don't want to be someone who pulls it 2 years later and say, sorry, you're on your own now. I think that's part of what we need to project is if we had to maintain sustainability so that members in the communities continue to receive service, that plus what do we do to expand? And I think that's where, to Commissioner French's point, we've been really mindful of. We'll find other sources, we get that going, and then if need be, we fill that in. And to Randy saying earlier, sometimes that means we need to, in 1 year, use more mental sales tax because the need is greater there because the state pulled it back. And I do feel we're coming into a year or two where the state's going to be a little bit more reluctant to spend money than they have historically in the last 3 years. And I really want to be mindful of saying our investment is in the community to ensure that individuals that are paying these taxes continue to receive those benefits to the greatest benefit possible.
And when it comes to the initiative for student wellness and some of those pilots, where would you say that we're at in terms of the pilot phase, right, versus the going to the state looking for expansion phase?
So the moment I started this project, because it took 2 years, I was already working with the state. So I always start projects with ensuring that we're having the conversation. It takes 2 years to get funding going, so they should be continuous. And so I think we're at that stage now with the help of some of the commissioners and their connections with some of the state representatives, recognizing how valuable this is to the community. And then also leveraging our existing connections through the Healthcare Authority and through Department of Commerce. I don't think the issue is, does this play a benefit? And it's been a resounding success. It's how do we go to that point of getting it paid for? And who does the money go to, the schools or to the county? Because remember, we're one of only one county other than King County, who uses their own, that is doing this, not even other states. And so we are really on the vanguard of pushing this out. So they're unsure about how to proceed, but they're guaranteeing us they want to do something. Now, Eastern Oregon is trying to steal our project too. So it's not about benefit, it's about how do we go smartly and transition without disproportionately affecting the schools involved. So plans from the beginning, but I think right now we're at that stage of we need to plan for the eventuality the state will not come through in this next year, but maybe the following. So 2 years out, and safely, we've done this pretty economically and leveraging their resources. So I'll be honest with you, this costs a lot more for King County than it does for us, and we get more bang for our buck. And that's because our team is doing a lot of the administrative work. So overall, we're getting a much better program and benefit with less money than what we anticipated in talking with King County.
And I can say I've had conversations with legislators on the K-12 committee that, hopefully we'll bring this forward and do a presentation to the K-12 committee this year. And just even off the cuff thoughts where, if the state, matched what the county is putting in, is there a way to do something like that? Well, that works for us here in Spokane County. It doesn't work for other counties though. since we're already doing this. So it's gonna be interesting to see what the state chooses to do, but I know Superintendent Reichelt from OSPI is very committed to trying to figure out how do we help with the mental youth. Because I know Eric Johnson has had conversations with him, so I'm hoping to piggyback on that conversation. So there's a lot of conversations going on. And like I said, the state of the county, I mean, it's at NACO, US Surgeon General presented last February, or this February, that, this is a national crisis and they're looking at it nationally. So I think if we can show some positive outcomes, which we're showing, and the need, I think there's opportunities there. But again, it's gonna take, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, but at least we're already starting to help the youth in our community. I mean, that's the thing that is like most impressive to me, is that we're actually showing our youth that we care and we're there and supporting them. So I'm anxious to see how as we expand to the other districts, since we're only in one district so far, how this next school year goes. But I mean, the fact that we're out there doing this where no one else, everyone's still talking about it. And everyone's still talking about what do we do? They haven't come up with anything yet, where we're actually trying to, be on the cutting edge of it.
Sorry, this is just a budget. On the bottom of the spreadsheet, you show the resources available for use, but then what happens to that fund balance?
And we should change the ending fund balance. If we brought the ending fund balance down to 10 million, 7 million for the IBNRs and 3 million for cash flow, it's just saying you could theoretically spend 16 million the first year, but if you did, then you would only have 3 million a year after. Realistically, we have 3 million a year where we're collecting more than
Revenue than current
expenses, and you have about 13 million of available fund balance roughly that you can either leave or, but that's really working with Justin. And do you use that 13 million? Do you hang on to it yet, to Al's and Mary's point? Do you hang on to that, and do we run a fund balance that's maybe $25 million, because we're hanging on to that?
Yeah, because I mean, you've budgeted to keep that school program on this spreadsheet.
Right.
You have an increase each year for that
Yep.
school program, but on the bottom, it still looks like we haven't.
You still have some room to make decisions.
Right.
on
It'd be helpful for me just to keep building in put in the liability that we discussed, and then just put in the other dollars that are still unallocated, so we can see on the out years what we're talking about. Because I think you make a good point that you don't know if the state's gonna match like the youth mental health program, but you've built in here at least 3 years beyond 2024.
So based on our current programs that Justin has in place, we collect about 3 million more than we spend just on current programs. But again, that's to Justin's point, they may take away some funding, we may need to use some of that. And that either can come from fund balance or our current annual excess that we're currently experiencing.
And on the school program, that's just where we're.
That's just one, so if we add more schools,
Expanding.
that would expand that number. If the state doesn't come in, that would then
Because we're still not
reduce-
in Meade or Central
right.
Valley or District 81.
correct, that would then reduce that delta between revenue and expenses on it.
So then at some point, I just was hoping we could talk about the expenditures from detention services, but that's not Justin's area. We'll let him off the hook.
Randy's here though. Yeah.
Mike's here.
So I was just wondering, like the increase
Just a second,
over
Chris,
time.
I will get to
Oh,
you after
sorry.
Amber. Or do you have something before we go to the detention
Go ahead.
services?
I was just gonna ask on Maddie's place, is there any, I know you'll bring it up later as a discussion, but is there any indication that the state is kind of changing its analysis of eligibility for funds for that service?
Great question. We have been diligently working with them. I know Commissioner Cooney has also been working with our contacts at the state. At this point in time, they gave them a 2-year infusion of cash with the caveat that they evaluate the ongoing need and determine essentially what the payment methodology is going to be for the Medicaid for NAS programs. It was never included in the states when the federal government allowed for this to occur. So the Fed said, go ahead and do it, but come up with a program. The state said, okay, then didn't do anything. And now they're doing it now, and they're using Maddie's Place as the kind of deciding factor. They've incorporated UW as part of the research on that side. And I think they're just waiting for that to be finalized to give some feedback. But we're not letting them just wait. So we're pushing back. We're reaching out to the state and asking for more information. But the amount that they gave them over the 2-year period has not been sufficient to cover the costs for maintaining what their current projection is, the need that exists. They've had to turn babies away. So I'll be presenting to the board here at the end of the month my plan to support them so we don't have to do that, with the hope of transitioning that over to the state in the near future once they're able to, get out of their own way. It's kind of unclear at this point because they're not really talking with us as much as they are with other entities. And I know, Commissioner Cooney, you've had a little bit more involvement with some of the representatives. I don't know if you have anything you want to share on that.
I keep talking to people, if you haven't noticed, on these things. So I think I think the feds are a little frustrated because they thought they gave the okay through the CRIM Act to have this happen, and then the state has been still not coming along. And I would say it's the healthcare authority that is at that point. There is funding. I think one state representative, thought that they were getting the funding to do the study, that was going to help the state come along. So, so there's still more discussions yet to be had. But the bottom line is, right now there's a gap that is happening. That yes, they have space, but they're turning babies away.
And that funding, it was legislative funding short-term, but the issue long-term is healthcare authority, right?
Well, and that funding they appropriated was some of their opiate dollars. So it wasn't even some of the existing general state fund dollars. So that's why there's a time limit on that, hoping that they would come to solve that in the next 2 years. But it was all projected costs. Apparently the need is much greater than that. Like I said, I have a plan. I will be presenting here at the end of the month, and I think we can do this without actually impacting any of the mental health sales tax either. Again, looking at other fund sources we have that would be able to achieve the same desired goal without impacting it. And it just goes again to our commitment to the taxpayers of Spokane County that we're going to invest the best bang for their buck.
And not out of the opioid dollars either.
Correct, and not out of the opiate dollars. More discussion on that as we begin looking at the formalized process.
Okay, so Amber, we'll go back to your detention services question.
So I'm thinking I remembered that we used to get reimbursement, because I'm looking at 2021. We only spent like 338,000 on mental health services for detention services. And then now it's up to 1 million. And next year projected at 1.2. Is that because we changed how we were providing the services?
I think some of that, Randy, is part of positions, right?
It was a shift from some funding that had come through the community services group. The additional kind of reporting that was required through community services to the healthcare authority to receive some funding through the state was beyond what detention services was capable of doing without increasing staffing levels. So we chose to shift from community services dollars, freeing those up for them to use on other programming, to mental health sales tax dollars to relieve a burden off detention services and still accomplish the same goal of providing mental health services inside of the jail facility.
We spend non-Medicaid dollars, right? That was for,
Yeah, they were specific proviso funds for jail transitions, jail treatment services.
And so is that still the preferred option? Or has there been discussion about whether or not we can go back to the Medicaid? Or is it still the same cost, is what you're telling me? Whether or not you use mental health sales tax or you're using the other dollars that were out of community services?
mm-hmm.
So it's a decision for executive leadership. we make the money available, and whatever's the best use depending on the need is what we defer to. Money's still there.
So there was, a lot of enhanced reporting and additional kind of justification and basically running mini insurance within the jail that was too burdensome for the jail staff to take on with the number of patients they need to see in the jail. And adding additional support staff was not the best option at that time. So we made the choice to just shift the funding instead.
Very few that come into the jail have insurance that we could chase, and it was, you know, they were trying to chase the dollars as best they could, but there was a lot more reporting that was asked of them. And so ultimately, it was felt that the best thing for us to do was not to chase those dollars and instead roll them over to Justin's group and then use our staff, money out of the sales tax and fund our staff.
So we still have those dollars at the county. We're just using them for other purposes.
Correct.
Okay.
So then I'll have a follow-up question to that. So with the mental health or with the federal waiver that the state's going after for behavioral health within the jail that they'll be hopefully paying for in the future, which I think isn't until 2025, correct? That we'll look at a shift there because I think that's, I want to say 1115 Medicaid waiver. At the federal level, the feds passed the law allowing for that because once somebody came into the jail, then their insurance was no longer valid.
Right.
And so they were losing the insurance. So it was all on the counties. So the feds have now allowed for, I think, up to 60 days.
They said they asked for 90 because California did.
Yes, I think we're just asking for 60
Yes.
to the states. So then the states have to put in a waiver to the feds. Our state has chosen, which WASAC has been kind of at issue with, that they're just putting in a waiver for mental health. And we're saying you need to actually do the full health.
Whole healthcare.
It's like, you gotta get them healthy before you can help them with their mental health needs. But that's, so we're trying to push at the state level, and the state is only asking for 60 days, which for the most part would, our length of stay isn't that long. But so we're gonna see some shifting as we get to that point, and I don't think it's effective till 2025, but we still work through
That portion of the waiver. Other parts of it will go in effect sooner, but the feds wanted to hold off on that part.
So there's also.
State give any indication on why only mental health is what they asked for?
I don't know, Eric, speak to me if that has been, have you heard?
They made a comment that they felt it was too much to ask for more when they already got a lot in the ask, so they didn't want to rock the boat. That's what I heard. So when we asked for them to ask, they said that wasn't on the table for their request.
So which is interesting that it's the state making this decision on our behalf because we're all the ones paying for this.
So in 2025, we may see something change here on the spreadsheet, just depending on where dollars are coming from.
So here's the challenge with the state funds. They're the funds of last resort. So the waiver allows for Medicaid to be applied, but doesn't apply to commercial insurance. That's the side that they were chasing down was third-party liabilities or commercial. So they'll still have to chase Medicaid now. So that's gonna have to have contracts. So it's dependent upon a contract, a rate set, and then ultimately the service being provided, which they will bog us down. And so I envision they'll have the same issues. And then you throw in our side, which is the commercial. The good news is we were able to do a much shorter pathway to get to that, but still, as the budget office and Senior Director Sparber said, the reporting requirements they'd have are a little bit more than what you would have for non-sales tax. They're onerous.
And then to your point, Justin, that's where staffing and headcount comes in. So depending upon the amount of work that comes with medical billing, balancing all that, we would be looking at potentially standing up an additional unit that we don't have a huge staff in right now that would be completely dedicated to essentially medical billing.
Is that common across the state with other jails?
Not all the jails have an internal mental health unit that's licensed for the service. So most of them do NAFCARE, they just sub-delegate out all that responsibility for them to bill.
We're one of the few jails that has its own mental health staff that were certified for that.
So then that brings to the next question, was the extra 500,000 this year, was that related to getting more, having NAPCare hire some more,
Yes.
because
Sidebar
of
and-
staffing
Yep.
Yep, that's it.
issues? Okay. And have they been able to successfully hire into those
On
positions?
and off, they've been, I mean, they have the same challenges that everyone else does. So if it's not, it's filled, it's either filled with overtime or they have a body member that's on and off.
Okay, Commissioner Jordan?
I know Justin, I asked you about this a little bit before, but can you remind me for the state dollars that used to go to mental health services in the jail, they've been repurposed, right? My understanding is at least some of that is kind of like reentry, transitional support. Can you describe what that is, or maybe we can get more information about that later?
No, definitely. One thing I'm good at is explaining excruciating detail things. So let me do it for you. It's a jail transitions program through one of our providers in the community. They see anyone coming out of an incarcerated setting, including our detention services. And they have a great relationship with detention services for direct referral. Their job is to ensure that they get from point A to point B and there's no drop. The biggest challenge for individuals having recidivism, especially when it comes to their mental health challenges, is not getting to their appointment. That's their job. So we used all that funding to expand that program, and they can serve anyone. And we're using peers too to expand that model of engagement for individuals with lived experience. So wonderful model. In fact, they want to do more, and I think it's been very beneficial.
And who is it that does that again? Is it Frontier or?
No, it's Passages Family Support.
Oh, Passages, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sure you can give more data offline on kind of how many counselors they have, what the uptake of the program is, and kind of the results you're seeing.
Yeah, we leveraged an existing program, so we're only needed to hire 2 staff, and they were using their other staff to support it. So it's wonderful. We get the best bang for our buck. And they're seeing on average, I think a month, over 30 people, and they're running, and that's guaranteed like from the jail into the services. They're seeing more, but they're connecting with various other resources. So direct into service, over 30 a month, and they're demonstrating that those individuals, again, long-term viability, are seeing less recidivism. So yes, we can get you more on that. They have a whole host of deliverables if you want to read those.
Very good, thanks.
And probably between you and Mike, we could have the data on all of that.
It's available.
Very good. Okay, Scott?
One comment on this. I know I'd raised this in recent budget cycles. The county provides about $2 million in support for the health district annually. And I had raised the question of, are there any eligible expenses that are incurred that aren't reimbursed otherwise from the health district that could be utilized from the mental health sales tax that would reduce the burden on the general fund? And just raise it again to see if there's another chance we could look at it. I don't know what those might be, but I think it's good to, if they're providing mental health services over there that are eligible uses, if we could utilize some of these dollars, that gives us some more flexibility in the general fund.
So I had Justin and Lola got together here recently. So I think you guys hadn't really had a chance to talk. But I think in what we get from the health district, and we'd have to look at it specifically from the budget, we see what the use of the local dollars are, which is our 2 million. And so we'd have to take a look to see if there's any opportunities there, because otherwise the rest of it's all coming from grant funding that may not be. But so, I mean, I think the budget that came to us is like $2,037,000, like $37,000 over the 2 million. So we can certainly look to see if any of that would be eligible, but I don't think so.
I mean, I think I have it here in my bag that a lot of it is administrative. It's not covered by the grants that the health district gets. There could be a small amount in the OTP program because they are wanting to do more wraparound mental health services when people come in for their, methadone treatments and such. But it's a very small amount, I think, that they.
Right, because
they're
most of
hoping.
that's Medicaid covered.
Yes.
We funded with block grant dollars on that side.
I recall that last time it was looked at, the initial review was its most administrative cost, but I just continue to raise it as they're budget services might change and evolve, that
I
might
don't
keep
know
an
if
eye
any
towards it.
epidemiology work can be funded out of, but there is some gap around epidemiology, but I don't think that's probably a mental health sales tax, probably. So, unfortunately.
You can always get the brain trust together, Jeff and Chris, and
Get the brain trust together so we can figure it
review
out.
it.
But I think,
It's a good thought.
yeah, but I think that's part of why, having Justin meet with Lola and have that discussion, and hopefully we'll have a new executive director here, or be able to, what we're gonna be interviewing, here shortly. But hopefully with that, especially too on the opioid stuff as well, dollars, with their task force of the health district. Trying to make sure that we are looking and the synergies are there, so we're not duplicating. So, thank you, Justin, for making those connections, so that way, since you know more than I do.
I very much doubt that, but thank you.
Any other questions for Justin? I just want to say thank
More
you.
later, I'm sure. Thank you.
Yes. No, and I just want to say thank you, because I know you're doing a great job. Really appreciate, all your efforts. You take a lot of calls from all of us as well. So I know it's not an easy job doing it all, but you're doing great. So thank you.
Yes, under the wonderful leadership of Scott here, we are doing wonderful work on our community services.
I just have one more item for today.
Okay.
And that is to talk about capital planning. So we're gonna tee that up for the 16th, start talking about capital planning. And we'll send you out an updated spreadsheet later today. But when we talked about how much money for the general fund, based on the conversation regarding interest income today, looking at some other one-time monies we have, such as the Monsanto settlement, which was about $3.7 million. We've got about $1 million that will be coming back to the general fund one time from the building department. And we have about $500,000 that will be coming back to the general fund one time from workers' compensation. And with our current budget where we're sitting, we'll have about $10 million to plan for capital without going into any other fund balance things. So just a general question, we've got 10 million kind of as the starting point. Is that where you want the conversation for next week to start off, or were you wanting to allocate any additional fund balance to start with for the first kickoff of our 6-year CIP?
But I think 10 is a pretty healthy number
We'll start with that then. We'll send you out updated spreadsheets. We will also bring our recommendation back to you on the 16th as well. And we will get those updated spreadsheets to you then later today.
Can you, what was that 1 million from, you said from the building
Building,
department?
so the building department would always charge the general fund for
Planning.
their share of planning, because we have to pay for planning. And there was always a true up, and the true up will be about $1 million coming back to the general fund. So that's what that is. That's an estimated number right now, but it's gonna be right around that.
And that'll go away in the future because planning is moving into the general fund for 2024 budget.
So we won't be moving money to them and then bringing it back, so.
Again,
Sorry, what was the question again about 10 million?
So I'm gonna start with under the general fund. We have 10 million to start with this year with some one-time monies.
Right.
Like the interest income. My question was, if you wanted more than that, that would have to come out of fund balance. Because right now, that's really our one-time monies that I have going into 2024.
Well, you could cut in other areas of the budget and free up dollars too.
Right.
So-
Right, so.
A question I had, have we decided, I know we got, just found out about it last week, but we figured out where we would like to find the roughly $1 million for the matching for the fire recovery.
Tomorrow's agenda.
Tomorrow, oh.
Yep.
Okay.
Jeff will bring in, we
Then
thought
I
we'd
will
start
wait.
with ARP and take a look through that first and see if that yields some opportunities. And then if yes, or if partial, then we can even look beyond there.
Okay, thank you.
One suggestion or ask for the commissioners, if we can go into the capital plan, if you remember, that capital plan's like $70 million this year. So it's clearly we're gonna have to move some things out because we can't afford $70 million. To the extent that you have some areas in there that you think are really critical for us to fund for capital, that would really be good for our next workshop on the 60. And I think we'll also go through kind of like we did last year. We'll populate some stuff in there that we kind of are aware of emerging, urgent sort of things. So then blending those things together, kind of focusing on that 10 million initially that we have identified for opportunities to invest in capital. Okay, sounds good.
Commissioner Jordan?
Just to be obnoxious and to be a bit of an agenda hawk, I just wanted to point out that I'm sure the sheriff's office was a last minute addition with that deadline to add or to apply for or make their order for vehicles. It looks like the mental health sales tax discussion didn't make the agenda specifically. I see Randy's raising his hand.
I wasn't sure if we were gonna have the spreadsheet and Justin available for this morning, so that was buttoned down on Saturday. So apologize for that.
I appreciate that.
And my understanding was the sheriff was gonna talk to each of the commissioners individually. Got a call at 8:30 this morning and we moved him back onto the agenda for today. So that is why I didn't have those noted.
No, that makes sense. And my personal preference would be maybe to add things and take them off rather than not have it and add it, just so anybody from the public can see what we will most likely be talking about. But thank you.
But, I mean, and I can say, I mean, we talked about having the sheriff's office be on the agenda. We just weren't sure where we were in the process. So there's gonna be those kinds of things that we can't always do. So,
I get that, yeah.
kind of, we felt it was kind of miscellaneous finance stuff, so it fit under this category versus we could have brought it up under miscellaneous in general.
Yeah, I was mostly thinking about the sales tax piece, but I totally get that. Just trying to remind everybody to be thoughtful of that.
And we try to have a catch-all 2024 budget. It can go in a lot of different areas. So mental health sales tax is one of those. The purchase of the vehicles for next year is also one of those. So to the extent that we know we're going to have particular topics we'll cover, we try to list those things out there, and we, as we all find, we kind of go in some different areas as questions get asked.
So as a follow-up to that, were the presentations sent out? And I apologize if I opened up the wrong email, like the clerk's office presentation.
Yeah, it was attached to the agenda.
Had to keep going down on it.
Okay.
And just to remind you, you
And
will
the
have.
sales tax as well.
There will be,
I
the
think I'm opening
Superior
the wrong
Court presentation will be at noon.
Oh, okay.
We have our
Yes, I think we have an executive session that will take us to that. Okay, so then, yes, so we'll continue the budget stuff at noon with the Superior Court presentation. But we'll go ahead and move on to the rest of our agenda because I know we've got an executive session and Commissioner Kearns to follow up for the consideration of the BOCC resolution.
Want me to?
Yeah, that's
Still same place I was last week. There's a lot of some of our regional partners are looking at taking a position on Measure 1. I think it would be appropriate if we did the same. So I would like us to, I would personally like us to take a position of favoring the measure. So, Chris?
I have a notice prepared if the board would like to pass this out. I apologize, I will forward this to both Commissioner French and Commissioner Jordan brought hard copies. It is fairly generic. It would, if the board passed this, I think I have the dates in here. This contemplates the board passing this notice tomorrow and then setting a hearing for this matter on the 10th.
So how does this work? I guess not having done this.
So the issues that the board would kind of need to decide, and they do not need to be included specifically in the notice, but is effectively how much time would the board like to speak to each side of the measure? We need to split the time, you know, basically evenly between pro and con for measure one. So the board would need to decide how much time the board would like and have that split effectively equally, and then how much time would like to offer for public testimony on it, and then again split that amount of time equally between pro and con comments. So regardless of the number of speakers, we would be setting an amount of time available for those for the pro and the same amount of time for the con. You know, the example would be if you set 15 minutes for each side and there were 15 speakers on one side and 5 on the other, well, 15 would get 1 minute each and the 5 would get 3 minutes each.
Did you say equal amount of time for the commissioners as well? Okay.
So each commissioner gets, or does it have to be a
No,
pro?
pro and con.
And then timed on that as well.
Right. So, and it is, you know, as far as the timing, you know, certainly if a statement goes over 30 seconds, that's not going to get you out of alignment with the statute, but you want to be as close to kind of on those time.
Chair, I
goals
gotta
that-
be the timekeeper. Okay.
So those are kind of the open issues that for the board to decide as far as the structure of the hearing on it, and then but that does not specifically need to be in the notice that goes out. It will just need to be kind of relayed at the beginning of the hearing, and you know, kind of based on who signs up to speak for which side. We will need, you know, people will have to kind of, especially for the public, they will have to, you know, identify which side of the measure they are speaking to, and then that will then kind of dictate for which time they would be allotted.
Okay, so then you were looking at, you said this is October 10th?
Yes, that's how it's drafted currently.
Is this on tomorrow's agenda, or is it?
It is not, it would need to be passed as a by leave.
Okay.
I'd throw out 15 minutes for the commissioners, each side, for and against. I'm assuming that would mean 5 for you, 5 for me, 5 for Al. And then, so 15 for, 15 against minutes for the commissioners. And then for the public,
It'll depend on how many people.
well, no, I think we
Well,
said.
you can,
Determine.
yeah, so you could determine it, you could wait
Oh, I
until
see
the
what you're
hearing
saying.
itself, and based on the number of people that sign up, make a determination on how much time to allot them, right? Because obviously we don't know how many people are gonna show up and want to be heard on either side. So you could wait until the 10th, see what kind of see how many people you have signing up for each side, and then make a determination on as far as how much time, you know, you want to allot. But once you've seen that, the amount of time for each side would need to be kind of basically allotted evenly.
I think it'd be better to determine a time here. We can
And
always
that's-
extend the time
Sure, and
if,
that is fine.
if we felt that there was
If the attendance, yeah, if the
Yeah.
attendance justified
Exceeded.
it, certainly.
Okay. So we have to come up with a time for citizens. And then a time for commissioners. Okay, so you've thrown out, and then I guess we have to determine, because I know Chris, you had talked about if we do this, having it be at a 5:30 hearing instead of a daytime hearing. So then timing of the hearing. I'm open to, I mean, you said yours for commissioners.
I mean, 15:15 seems like up to you, seems plenty to me, I don't know, so.
Just like 10 minutes is plenty for each side.
Probably.
If you want, yeah, just throwing it out, get the ball rolling. For the public, I would think we're between 20 to 30 each side. Think?
I'd probably go 30 for sure.
30,
Just-
okay.
It gives 15
Yeah.
minutes, 15 minutes
Oh, no, I meant each side.
each side. Okay, sorry.
Okay, how about 20 minutes each side? So total of 40 minutes for public comment on that?
Yeah, I mean. I
So,
guess
so
you'd
that
say
would be
about
40 minutes,
20.
and then if we did 10 each side for the commissioners, that brings us up to a total of an hour of discussion. So we did 10 for each side for commissioners, 20 for each side for the public. That's a total of 10, or a total of 1 hour of discussion.
Yes. Got your mouth right. Very good.
I'm on today. Numbers are
Like,
clicking.
okay, my 10. I'm like,
So if about, I'm just saying. So if you had 10 people on each side, I'm just making this up, but they could have a couple minutes to speak then. You'd wanna give people at least a couple minutes to be able to say something,
and then.
2 to 3 minutes, and that's how
Can
you
have a
could.
sheet allowing people to sign in pro or con?
Yes, yeah.
You know, that aren't speaking, but they can sign in.
I mean, that would be optional. There's no statutory requirement on that.
There would be nothing preventing the public to where if they show up and say there are 10 people, but they say, we're gonna designate 2 people to speak on behalf of the whole group, and they each speak for 10 minutes on theirs. I mean, there's a,
I think
right,
we would
correct.
wanna predetermine that.
Yes, yeah,
if
no, we would wanna
want
make
to
sure everybody
allow-
in the, so somebody doesn't eat up all the time and then no one else gets to speak.
Yeah.
But
It's nice for
But
people to
nothing
kind
to
of be, if
prevent
they
them
wanna
from-
prepare their comments, to know approximately how much time they would have.
Then how would we determine if I've got more people, I mean, there's just all these questions. More people signed up, then we, say if we have 30 people signed up.
So that's, I mean, that's what's gonna dictate
Do I still
ultimately
stick
how
with
much
2
time.
minutes and can do
Well, you
first come,
can,
first serve?
well, so the issue would be if one side had substantially more people signed up than the other side, then that's where you would really need to make a determination, because the people on the side where there are fewer wanting to speak would ultimately be get more time per person. Because the split needs to be an approximately equal amount of time allotted to each side, not an equal amount of speakers allotted to each side.
Commissioner Jordan?
Just 2 questions for Chris. Number 1 is on this notice. Is it technically saying that the board is looking to consider a resolution to support Measure 1 and therefore we invite people expressing opposing views, or is it, I'm just kind of confused reading the language.
Fair enough. The intent is to invite anybody who wishes to
Okay.
speak in favor or opposition. It is set up that way because based on our conversations to date, I assume the intention of the majority of the board is to pass a resolution supporting Measure 1. And so that is how the notice is currently set up. That, of course, can be changed if the board so chooses, or I can change that wording to make the notice more neutral and less anticipatory of the outcome. But no, the intent is to notify the general public of the opportunity to weigh in favor or opposition.
It just seems a little strange to me that it says the board members of the public will be afforded the opportunity for the expression of views opposing ballot measure 1. So if you were reading this notice and you were a supporter, you might think, oh, I guess I don't need to go because they're only inviting those opposed. It's just kind of weird. Personally, I would prefer it to be facially neutral. That would be my own preference. So we know what the outcome is likely to be, but if we did a neutral notice, then everybody knows they can come regardless of what their views are. So that's one.
Yeah.
Number two, just to clarify, if the board votes in favor of Measure 1, that doesn't change the use of public resources otherwise, right? So if there was a press conference using county resources, the folks at that press conference would still have to remain neutral in their language. Is that correct?
Well, so there are some specific rules on press conferences.
Okay. All right.
Generally, statements have to remain neutral, educational based, but however, in an open press conference, any direct questions can be answered. And so any direct questions on specific aspects of Measure 1, any county official who is there to answer those questions at that press conference can provide an answer to the questions asked.
Okay.
And as we're up there, because then the commissioners are up there in support or opposition.
Correct.
So they can state in that public setting
Right. And
their opinion.
Right.
Without it crossing the lines. So you can always direct anyone to those statements that will be now public.
This hearing that is, envisioned by the notice is an explicit exemption to the general rule. This is explicitly allowed under the RCW to hold this hearing and provide an opportunity for the board to provide a collective statement in opposition or in favor to a ballot measure. So I'll very easily change the notice to kind of read more neutrally. I guess on the other question that I would have is, it is currently set as a 2 p.m. Is the board wanting this to be 5:30? Is that?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, is 5:30 work for people?
Brenda just sent out something about is it like the groundbreaking for the Spokane Indians upgrades that afternoon?
And there's a tentative hold for a photo shoot from 4 to 5. So
yeah, I mean, I'd prefer to do an evening to allow more members of the public to be able to come.
So yeah, I would do an evening.
Would we move our entire agenda then to, or just this hearing?
Just that item.
I will make those changes then and then have this ready for
And I would say,
tomorrow.
I agree that having it be a neutral, because until we take an action, we know what potentially it's gonna be, but it's not an action.
It's not official until it's certainly, and I see Commissioner French.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, and I will be participating via Zoom as well for that meeting.
Very good. And you can attend at the 5:30 on the 10th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe just, we can keep it somewhat I was just thinking about, you know, up to language around like the time frames, just to, depending on how many people come that evening. I don't know.
Yeah,
I would hate to be too strict about it when, you know, people take the time to come down and, you know, be heard in front of the board.
And that is kind of one of the reasons we don't put those time limits in the notice, because you don't know how many people you're gonna get, and if you
kind of just need
a lot too much or too little on the front end, then you're kind of stuck, so.
So what do we do if, say it is lopsided attendance on one side or the, and one side, everybody who wants to speak has spoken, and there's still people on the other side that want to continue to speak? Do we have to cut it off?
Yeah, there, at some point, there will need to be a cutoff,
Okay.
one way or another.
So at some point, it's out of our hands. If there's nobody left to testify on one side and
that is one way to do it, that would balance it out, but not, certainly not required. There is not an explicit procedure or process that's required by the statute. It is simply
Trying to keep it as equal time as possible.
equally timed, so that both sides get equal opportunity to.
Commissioner French, did you have another comment? I saw your hand up.
No, I'm fine. I just didn't lower it fast enough.
Okay, no worries. Commissioner Jordan?
I just have one question about this. I'm certainly happy to have this topic come up and to participate in the meeting. It's just a question on the wisdom of having this vote. It seems like with the public education campaign, there's been a real emphasis on, you know, the county educating, not advocating, right? And so I just raised that as, do you think it's worth it to be on the record and clear in this way? Or do you think that may kind of muddy the waters a bit about whether this is neutral information, those types of things? I just asked the question, but I'm happy to participate in it.
I think that was what Chris Anderson was saying, is that this is the one forum where you don't have to be neutral, that it exempts us from that perspective.
Yes, I get that legally. I guess I'm asking about in the larger sense of the community understanding.
I don't see it that way. There's a lot of other, like I said, there's other cities around here, other jurisdictions that are taking stances on this or considering it. I just think it'd be appropriate if we did too, since we're the jurisdiction that placed this on the ballot.
And I have no problem participating in this either, but I think Commissioner Jordan is making, usually the jurisdiction that places it on the ballot, not always, but they don't usually, they usually hold a forum when they decide to put it on the ballot or not. And then obviously that jurisdiction placed it on the ballot, whether it's a school district or a county or a city. And it's usually other than jurisdictions that will weigh in after the fact about whether they support or don't support it. So that's, I think, is that kind of what you're getting at, Commissioner Jordan?
Yeah, and that we are the ones providing the education campaign as well. But I understand it. It's just a question.
I guess I would just say I look at it as an opportunity for us as commissioners to actually state our opinion on it. Because I know there's been some question whether some of the commissioners have been silenced, and so it just alleviates that question, that everyone gets to actually state their opinion publicly. So I don't think it's confusing to the public. I think it actually gives them the opportunity to know where each of us stand on the topic.
Fair enough.
So this will be by leave tomorrow. So wouldn't we want to put the approximate time in, just so people have an expectation?
So we're not surprising anybody
Yeah, I don't
either
wanna-
when they show up?
Because then I guess it's going to be, I mean, obviously I'll consult with people, but it's up to me as the chair running the meeting, how what that pro and con item looks like if choosing to extend or not, or shorten or not.
Mhm.
I mean, that's gonna be a game time decision.
Sure, yeah, and we could do that. We could say, give an anticipated amount of time that will be allotted for public comment. And then if there is need for additional, there is no prohibition on extending that
But
day
it's,
of.
but I'm just checking, since it's a meeting, Robert's rules, it's at the discretion of the chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Because there are correct, that is correct, because there are no other statutes or any other regulations
Okay.
dictating that. You're correct, Robert's rules
I mean,
control it.
Like I said, I would be talking with everybody, but at some point, decisions have to be made. So Commissioner French?
Yeah, my experience in these kind of events is that you need to have a time allotted, and my recommendation is you're going to stick to the time allotted. Otherwise, there's going to be an incredible amount of pressure on the chair to change the time by one side or the other, and that doesn't feel like they've gotten enough time to make their point and stuff. So I think a disciplined structure that has equal amount of time for both sides to make their case is probably the best way to go, and not create an opportunity for any undue pressure on the chair to change the rules in the middle of a session.
Thank you. I appreciate that, since we haven't done one of these. So.
In King County, we would usually post them as up to
Yeah,
each
that's what
side.
I was-
So that way, if nobody showed up, you didn't get hammered for shortening it, and you weren't stuck sitting there until the clock ran out. And then people testified in the order they signed up, but you could always say, I pass. Or if there's unanimity of one side or the other, that two people were gonna do it all or whatever number. Otherwise, you just call them in the order. People could pass if they wanted someone else to speak for them, and then when the clock ran, the clock ran. Sometimes you have a huge crowd, sometimes you had practically nobody, but to Commissioner French's point, if you have a big crowd and it's not set, you can end up with us one time calling the city of Seattle's police for backup. And we actually all moved to a back room for our own safety. So
Up to then, is what it
Up to.
sounds like.
In that scenario, do they go pro and con, pro and
yes,
con?
and it was always alternated. They didn't alternate the time as tightly as the speakers, back and forth. Of course, at some point at the end, you gotta even it out.
So those details we can work through, but I
Yes.
think it is important in this resolution that's gonna be violated to get it up to a time.
So, and what I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong here, I've heard what we want to start with is 20 minutes per side for public comments.
I don't know, we may wanna up that to up to 30. I'm just thinking, you don't have to go that long.
As long as you post it as up to.
Yeah.
You don't wanna guarantee 30.
But that's what I was trying to say earlier, is like an up to language is better than just
Then
a very
if
firm.
there's not enough pro or con, we have to be consistent with the timing. So then,
Well, we have to be consistent with the timing as far as making sure it's equal.
So if there's only two on one side and they're done at 12 minutes, we would cut the other side at 12 minutes also. That's one example. Anyway, as well.
so.
I have no idea how many people will come. I'd rather err on up to a little bit longer than 20 minutes, just so that if there is people that come, they're more likely to have their opportunity to be heard.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll go up to 30 minutes.
And 10 on the commissioner side for each, for the for,
So
10
10.
for the against.
Yeah. Long, and that's a really long speech.
That's split between three of us. They're gonna have the hard time, 5 minutes each.
You don't have to use all the time, do you?
Same for you though, if one side doesn't, the other side gets cut.
Might get shut off.
Can we have like a buzzer or a bell to cut each other off on our own comments?
Training collar.
Yeah, I just remember Max had to testify before the Senate Transportation Infrastructure Committee in DC. And he says it was awesome because they all had 5 minutes to respond, you know, to give their testimony. But the senators only had 5 minutes as well to, you know, talk back, you know, or make their case for the bill. So I thought that was interesting, and kind of a nice way to do it. It's nice to have a forced time to say, no, you don't get to just grandstand, and you've got to just speak to the issue as clearly as possible within 5 minutes, which is grandstanding, because that's a long topic. So, okay, so we'll go up to 30. And then 10 and 10 for the commissioners, which we don't have to put that in the resolution, just for the public
Yes.
to be aware.
We can provide that notice for the public as to
And then it'll
the
be
time.
a neutral position at this point in time.
Yes. Yep, I will make those modifications and have it ready for
And
my leave tomorrow.
October 10th at 5:30.
Yes.
And Gina, is the hearing room available? We should check that.
Your hearing room, of course it's available.
Well, it is, but there's I know other groups that use it, so just making sure. Okay,
What was the length of time for the commissioners again? I'm sorry, I missed that.
10 minutes for each side.
Okay, thanks.
It's 4 and 10 minutes opposing. So potentially you'll get to talk longer than I do.
I'll use it wisely.
Okay. Takes care. And is there any other miscellaneous items?
For me.
Before we get to. Okay, no other miscellaneous items. I do know you stated you're in the executive session.
Yeah, so just a time check, it's almost 11:40. I've got one item that I think we can squeeze in before Superior Court comes here. Superior Court's doing their budget presentation from 12 to 12:30. So do the commissioners want to, there's 3 exec sessions. One I'd like to do now. Would you like to do the other 2 after the Superior Court, or would you like to do those tomorrow?
How long
The other 2 are about 20 minutes each.
each?
That's my estimate.
That's
tomorrow morning. Oh, it's gonna be up to about noon, yep.
That's pretty packed.
Sorry, but our 2 o'clock is not. We've got 2 public hearings, which are pretty, I think they're pretty straightforward.
We have our budget.
And the budget roundtable.
Roundtable.
I mean, I'm happy to come back after the Superior Court, but I don't know what else's schedule is.
I'm fine with that.
Are you okay, Commissioner French and Commissioner Jordan, to come back after the Superior Court? Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm good.
okay.
You wanna do a 30-minute lunch break, or you just wanna come right back after?
I would just prefer to just come right back, and you may take a 5-minute break between. Okay, so first one.
All right, so
Go.
just the one up right now is gonna be acquisition, lease of real estate under RCW 4230-110-1B. In addition to the commissioners, Chris Anderson and myself will be Jeff McMorris, Randy Bischoff, and Michael Sharapata. It'll be, what we're gonna do, about 18 minutes.
18 minutes, any action?
No action.
No action anticipated.
Nope.
Okay, very good. We're gonna go into executive session for the reasons stated, and we'll see everybody back here at noon.